Part 67. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 688. The first one invites Zhang Yuanbo for the spring plague, the second invites Lu Yuanda for the summer plague, the third invites Zhao Gongming for the autumn plague, the fourth invites Zhong Rongui for the winter plague, and the fifth invites the general manager Shi Wenai for the middle plague. Just listening to Su Tong's mouth chanting the incantation, the lantern on the altar also slowly rotated. There are 5 sides on the lantern, and each side is written in cinnabar with the name and talisman corresponding to the Plague King. Every time the lantern is turned, the dog's head on the altar will make a low buzzing sound. The 3 dog-headed eyes were glowing with blood, and the blood was getting thicker and thicker, as if there was blood overflowing from the eyes, showing an unspeakable evil aura. After Su Tong finished the technique, he used his life ikumen to take a look, and saw 3 dog heads opening their mouth slightly, spitting out a stream of evil spirits that looked like thick liquid, and floated towards the room behind the wall. According to the master, as long as Ashina lies on the bed with nailed walls, the yellow plague will continue to entangle his destiny. Invisible and invisible, no one can notice it. As soon as the evil spirit of the dog head completely ignited the lantern, the yellow plague broke out, and even the arrival of the Deluo god could not save it. After completing the technique and confirming that there were no other problems, Su Tong quietly jumped out of the courtyard wall and walked to the other courtyard where he lived. Sun Yang. I'm back. Prepare some food and drink. I'm almost starving to death. Su Tong said, striding in. Your Majesty, you are finally back. Before Sun Yang could respond, she heard a familiar voice of concern. Su Tong took a look and saw that it was Yuan Shushi. Sneeze. At the same time, Ashina, who was far away on the streets of Luoyang, suddenly sneezed uncontrollably. This sneeze made Ashina's head feel foggy. He raised his hand and patted his forehead, feeling a little uncomfortable all over his body. Captain, that kid didn't die last night, why don't we take action as soon as possible to avoid future troubles? The companion following Ashina asked in a low voice. Don't worry, he has the mission item in his hand. The Suantan Dharma conference may be an opportunity to start the mission. You might as well wait and see. Ashina said, slowly raising his head and looking at the signboard of Jingxi Yufang in front of him, with the golden jade exquisite ball here, let's do the task first and reach an agreement with Gi Lao as soon as possible. After hearing Ashina's words, the 2 companions' anxious hearts calmed down for a moment. The Shadow Group's development has always relied on the group leader's advice. As far as they knew, although this Gi Lao was a Kunlun slave, he was the master of the underground kingdom in Luoyang City. He controls all the black transactions in Luoyang City and is well aware of all kinds of information. The girls in his hands control all the shady things in Luoyang City, and there are even many officials who have the handle. It can be said that they are black and white, covering the sky with one hand. Their identities meant that they would not be able to find those orthodox allies in Luoyang City. For example, Chongxian Hall, Hunshan Prison, etc. are absolutely impossible to do business with Turks like them. As for the Modo sect, after seeing Lu Ji's methods, Ashina really wanted to join the Modo sect's camp. But the contemptuous look Lu Ji gave him last night made Ashina realize the inconvenience caused by his identity. Thinking of this, Ashina inevitably complained again in her heart, why should he be given such a damn Turkic identity? If it weren't for this bad identity, relying on his luck, he would have already established a firm foothold in Luoyang City by this time. After much deliberation, this Gi Lao was the most suitable candidate. Moreover, he believed that the bargaining chip in his hand was enough to make this Geno join forces with him wholeheartedly. Ashina was still thinking about her layout and how to counter-attack from the headwind. She didn't notice that an inconspicuous yellow spot had appeared on her forehead. Not to mention that from this moment on, the golden lion in his luck has begun to sneeze uncontrollably. It was Ashina's first time to visit Jingxi Yufang Street. He heard that there was everything on this street, but when he actually walked in, he realized that it was even better than he had imagined. Beautiful girls on the street, wearing light tulle, dance gracefully under the gaze of everyone. Unlike Tanhulo, for the girls here, as long as you are willing to pay, there are no messy rules. As long as you pay enough, you can find any kind of girl. As Ashina and his group were Turks, they inevitably attracted the scrutiny of many people. There are even some wealthy Han family men who are shouting and cursing from a distance, "Hey, Turkic thieves, what are you doing in our central plains? Are you here to see your mother-in-law?" As soon as these words came out, there was a lot of laughter in the surrounding streets. These people looked confident and didn't care at all about the swords in the hands of Ashina and others. Damn it! We are also foreigners, why is there such a big gap between reality and the script? Being pointed at and scolded by others, Ashina and the other three couldn't do anything at will, so they had no choice but to walk inside. The only thing to blame is that their identities are too sensitive. After finally following the mission clues and arriving at the slave market, Ashina took out the token, but was told to wait here. This made Ashina very depressed. However, this is really not to make things difficult for them, but Ashina and the others really came at the wrong time. At this moment, deep inside the rioters' shack on the other side of the street, a man wrapped in a scarlet fur sat cross-legged by the stove, holding a small yellow cat in his arms. When he saw the head on the table, a smile finally appeared on his flat and thick lips. "Did you kill the bad guy?" "I got it by luck." At that time, Cao Huazheng and the Moduo cult were fighting to the death on the lake. Fu Hongjun, the leader of the Moduo cult, gave him a desperate blow and severely wounded him. Then he was severely wounded by another man named Shijin. I dived into the water and took the opportunity to make a sneak attack. I killed Cao Huazheng, but I got the head, but the coiled dragon stick was able to be inserted. On the side, Gao Zhou recounted the battle process last night word for word, including Shijin's Xing boxing and how Fu Hongjun fought to the death. Even though these people in the room were all desperados, they were frightened after hearing the whole process. The Gilao sitting cross-legged by the stove had an expressionless face, as if he was thinking about the flaw in Gao Zhou's words. At this time, someone walked in and handed a note to Gilao's hand. After Gilao quickly glanced at the note, his face finally showed joy. The note not only reported the death of Cao Huazheng, but also recorded in detail the list of corpses fished out of the water by the government. There is indeed Fu Hongjun's body among them, and there are also autopsy records made by his wife, which prove that Fu Hongjun died from a broken heart and bone. This injury is completely consistent with Gao Zhou's statement. It is enough to prove that there is no water in Gao Zhou's words. Ha 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 ha. The Gilao finally laughed. The bad guys had been attacking them for many years, especially the smuggling channels. They had been intercepted by the bad guys several times, causing them heavy losses. Now that Cao Huazheng is dead, it will be difficult for bad guys to deal with them in a short time. Your things. Gilao took out the jade pendant from his arms and handed it to Gao Zhou. From today on, you will stay with me and help me with things. If you have mine, you will naturally have it too. Thank you, Galo. When Gao Zhou got the jade pendant, he got a reminder that the mission was completed, but this was not his final mission. The details would have to wait and see. He could simply stay here and live a more comfortable life. Gilao, there are some Turks outside with tokens saying they are coming to see you. Seeing that Gilao finally confirmed the news that Cao Huazheng was dead, the man outside the door dared to walk in and report to Gilao. Turks. The Gilao raised his generous eyebrows, and he also disliked these Turks very much. A large part of the Kunlun slaves were also sold to the Central Plains by the Turks. However, after seeing the token handed over by his subordinates, Gilao still motioned for them to come in. When Ashina and others were brought into the room, they could not help but frown after smelling the pungent smell in the room, and looked at the gecko in front of them. You come to me with a token, and I will not reject you, but if you don't give me a satisfactory explanation, I won't let you walk out alive. Gilao played with the cat in his arms and raised his eyelids. Those deep eyes were as hollow as if they could suck away a person's soul. Even a player like Ashina, who kills without batting an eye, felt his heart tighten when he saw these eyes. He calmed down and took something out of the prop book and put it on the table. It is rumored that 3 years ago, the great monk Zhenju of Xingjiao Temple passed away, leaving behind 3 relics. If you can collect 3, you can transform into a Buddha and receive the blessing of Buddhism's supreme luck. This is one of them. Ashina placed the relic on the table, and gently lifted the red cloth on it with his fingers. Suddenly, golden light shone on everyone's faces, and bursts of Buddhist scriptures echoed in their ears. Even these butchers who have become numb to life actually have a long-lost smile and relaxation on their faces. It was as if hearing the chanting inside could completely relax them. Just when everyone was listening intoxicated, Ashina put the relic away. This is mine. Buzz. As soon as these words came out, the murderers around them all pulled out their blades. In their dictionary, any treasure that comes here has only one owner, and that is Gilao. But Ashina didn't pay attention to the blades placed on his neck. He bent down and stared at the wrinkled face of the Gilao in front of him. I can give you the relic, but you have to help me. What would you like? The corners of the Gilao's plump lips were split, revealing his withered yellow teeth, and his empty eyes revealed a soul-stirring light. Simple. Ashina put the relic in Gilao's hand. You get the relic, and I get a friend. If necessary, just kill one person for me. Who? Prince Gong, Li Zheng. Gaozhou, who was in the corner, slowly raised his head when he heard this, looked sideways at Ashina, and thought to himself, huh, another idiot. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 689. Huangji Villa. Su Tong and Yuan Shaozi came to the backyard. Guo Yi unlocked the door of the ice cellar in the backyard and stood outside, preventing others from entering to watch. Stepping on the steps, Yuan Shushi walked into the ice cellar, and a chill suddenly hit him, making Yuan Shushi shiver. Although he is a great master, he is just a craftsman. The state of being a master is only about his craftsmanship and has nothing to do with his physical strength. A stream of white mist came out of his mouth, and as Su Tong walked deeper and deeper, when Su Tong lit the oil lamp in the ice cellar, Yuan Shao saw the coffin lying quietly in the ice cellar. That's it? I just don't know if it's locust wood and whether it can be used to repair the money mold. Su Tong pointed to the coffin in front of him and said, Your Majesty, please let me take a look later. Yuan Shushi walked to the coffin and observed it carefully for a moment. With a strange look on his face, he rubbed his palms together, and when his fingers were warm, he gently tapped the coffin. Hearing the muffled sound coming from the coffin, his eyes lit up, and he wanted to open it. The coffin lid, but one of Su Tong's hands was pressed on the coffin lid. An old friend is buried here, so it's best not to disturb him. When Yuan Shushi heard this, he immediately cupped his hands and said, I was the one who was rude. I hope the prince will not blame you. Let's go out. Good. Su Tong also saw that Yuan Shushi was indeed very cold down there, so he stepped on the steps with him to leave. When the two of them walked to the door of the cellar, they heard a sudden slight collision in the ice cellar, but neither Yuan Shushi nor Su Tong stopped. Being able to build Buddha statues for saints in the palace, Yuan Shushi knew very well what should be heard and what should not be heard. He spoke less and asked less questions, which made him feel relaxed. Wait until the two of them walked out of the ice cellar. Yuan Shushi then said, It's a rare dark wood, but it's not locust wood, but camphor wood. I'm afraid it won't be possible to repair the money mold. After hearing what Yuan Shushi said, Su Tong couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. But don't worry, Your Majesty. If there is no locust tree, other methods may be used. I just ask your majesty to hand over the money model to me and allow me a while. Hearing what Yuan Shushi said, Su Tong couldn't help but have some hope in his heart. Even if you take it, you are not in a hurry. If you need any expenses, just tell me. After Su Tong said that, he turned around and walked into the room and pretended to rummage around, then took out the money model and handed it to Yuan Shushi. This thing is already in a damaged state. Even if Yuan Shushi fails to repair it, Su Tong will not feel distressed. I will certainly live up to the prince's trust. Yuan Shushi took the money model and then said goodbye. Su Tong specifically asked Guo Yi to deliver it. Your Majesty, let's eat first. Sun Yang saw that Su Tong had finished his work, so she called Su Tong to eat quickly. Sun Yang thought that Su Tong must not have eaten well after being out all night, so she specially cooked a large table of dishes. In other words, if you want to live a good life, you must have a treasure at home. Although Sun Yang is not as beautiful and gentle as those delicate maids, but since Sun Yang came, she doesn't have to worry about the trivial things around her at all. While eating, he called out the prop book. In any case, the trip to the Liuyi Museum was not without any gains. In addition to allowing Gao Zhou and Gu Zibai to interact with each other, they took a step forward in their tasks, and this thing was also a psychological comfort for themselves. Bodhi Gold Fruit. It is said that Sakyamuni attained enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, received the Buddha's shadow, and produced 7 fruits. Passive skill, Mahanirvana Sutra. The bearer has Dharma skills add 2 and has learned the Mahanirvana Sutra. Active skill, Buddha's light shines everywhere. Spend 300 script points to summon the golden body of Buddha. While the golden body of Buddha lasts, the damage of all Buddhist skills will be increased 3 times, and a purification effect will be produced on all teammates within a radius of 300 meters on the scene, eliminating all negative status on the body. Cooling time, 7 days. Duration, 15 minutes. Note, you are so bold and evil, I can tell at a glance that you are not human. The stuff is pretty good, but my Dharma skills are pitiful. After the Vajra seal, there is nothing else. It seems that I still need to water the 7 treasures bamboo of merit as soon as possible. Based on this calculation, the time tonight is about the same, just in time to go to the master to share the merits. Just when Su Tong was thinking about how much merit his master could give him tonight, Guo Yi walked in from the door. Your Majesty, did something happen last night? Guo Yi walked in and asked Su Tong carefully. It turned out that when he went out, he realized that the streets that used to be lively were extremely deserted today. When I inquired about it, I found out that it was said that a bad handsome man was having a funeral. The saint ordered that he be buried with royal dignity and all the shops along the street were closed. Guo Yi had met Cao Huazheng, but he didn't have a good impression of Cao Huazheng at all. However, the sudden death of this bad handsome man was unexpected. Su Tong took a bite of the pancake, raised his head suddenly when he heard this, and the pancake in his hand fell to the ground. Cao Huazheng is actually dead. Your Majesty, you don't know. Seeing that the prince was so surprised, Guo Yi felt relieved. After all, he was the bad commander, the commander of the bad guys in the world. The bad guys would definitely not let this matter go. As long as his prince was not involved, that would be the best. I really don't know about this. Let's go and have a look together. Su Tong sighed, stood up and prepared to go to see the bad handsome man off together, but was stopped by Guo Yi. Your Majesty, there is no need to go. I heard that it is a tomb, and there are more than a dozen bloody heads as burials. I can't eat after watching it. Then I won't go. Food is the most important thing for people. It's more important for me to have enough food first. Upon hearing this, Su Tong shook his head repeatedly, picked up the pancake on the table again, put it to his mouth and started to eat it. In Luoyang City today, more than just a bad handsome man is leaving. 1 bow, 2 bows, 3 bows, family thanks. The Hunshan prison was also desolate, with white strips hanging at the door and many people coming to pay their respects. Among them are many famous figures in the world. After all, Hunshan prison also has the power and responsibility to supervise strangers in the world. And Gu Peiyuan is also an old man who has been enlightened for many years. Even if the saint no longer relies on Gu Peiyuan, it does not prevent him from sending people to chase him as a duke and confer titles such as prince and tutor. At least this person who was once the best in the world, there will be no shortage of due decency. Zhao Peng, from now on the responsibility of Hunshan prison will fall on you. An old man in the court took Zhao Peng's hand and said, Zhao Peng will serve as the imperial court and devote his whole life to the saint. Zhao Peng quickly expressed his stance to everyone. According to the rules of the Hunshan prison, the master does not need to go through a favor or recommendation to take over. As the eldest disciple, Zhao Peng became the supervisor of the Hunshan prison, which is a legitimate move. Zhao Peng had just expressed his position. When he looked back, he saw that his brows were furrowed and many people were surrounding Zhang Haisheng, fawning over him. Even the old man who had spoken to him sincerely just now turned around and walked up to Zhang Haisheng. As soon as he opened his mouth, he congratulated Zhang Haisheng for becoming the top man today. He had a bright future whether he joined the court or founded a sect. These snobs only know how to flatter you, senior brother, just don't pay attention to them. Nai Haitang walked to Zhao Peng and couldn't help complaining in a low voice when he saw this. After saying that, he took out a tips bag from his waist and handed it to Zhao Peng. According to the rules, senior brother will soon receive an imperial edict from the imperial court and officially take over the Hunshan prison and become the superintendent. This silverfish brocade bag belongs to me. Nai Haitang took out the brocade bag that he had embroidered a long time ago. But before he finished speaking, he heard a shout from outside the door, Longhu Mountain, Zhao Xianzhen, Zhao Tianqi is here. Everyone was immediately shocked, Master Zhao is here. For a moment, everyone turned around and went out to greet him with expressions of surprise. Zhao Peng immediately ignored Nai Haitang and led a group of disciples out of the door to greet him. After Nai Haitang was stunned for a moment, he could only silently hold the brocade bag in his hand and follow him silently. Zhao Xianzhen is a contemporary celestial master. The saint attaches great importance to Buddhism, but he cannot shake the status of the celestial master of Longhu Mountain. I saw the person wearing a Taoist robe, holding a fly whisk, wearing a Taoist crown on his head, walking from the corridor with 2 Taoist boys. Although the Taoist is young and looks to be in his early 40s, he is an immortal Taoist who is not stained by the worldly world. Meet the heavenly master. As the eldest disciple, Zhao Peng stepped forward to greet him, crossed his hands with thumbs pointing upward, and bowed heavily to the front. Don't be so generous. I will be ashamed to receive it. Zhao Xianzhen swept the whisk in her hand, and a light and soft force lifted Zhao Peng up from the ground. The seemingly innocuous action shocked many people present. It is said that Zhao Xianzhen is a direct disciple of the Longhu Mountain Celestial Master. He took over the position of the Longhu Mountain Celestial Master after the old Celestial Master retired more than 10 years ago. As for his strength, there are no rumors in the world. Now the understatement here is to help Zhao Peng up. With this strength, even if it is not enlightenment, I am afraid it is not far away. The pinnacle of the Dao. Behind everyone, Zhang Haisheng, who was dressed in filial piety, quickly glanced at Zhao Xianzhen. With his state of enlightenment, he could naturally see that this Longhu Mountain heavenly master was not an enlightened person. It's just that although the other party is not enlightened, the mellow Tao Qi rises all over his body, giving people a feeling of being hidden and unfathomable. Zhang Haisheng asked himself that if he took action against this heavenly master, he might not have a chance of winning. After Zhao Xianzhen paid a simple worship, she looked at the spiritual tablet of Gu Peiyuan in front of her, Immeasurable Heavenly Lord, I originally wanted to pay a visit when I entered the city yesterday, but I was summoned into the palace by His Majesty. Unexpectedly, I missed it in the end. After saying that, Zhao Xianzhen turned around and glanced at Zhao Peng, but just nodded to Zhao Peng, and then strode to Zhang Haisheng. Zhao Xianzhen looked at Zhang Haisheng, and could no longer hold back the joy in his eyes. Holding the whisk in hand, he said to Zhang Haisheng, I have something to discuss with my Taoist friends in detail. It's convenient for me to say nothing. Zhang Haisheng thought for a moment and shook his head. Today is inconvenient, but the future will be long. Rejecting Zhao Xianzhen in front of everyone would have been unbelievable to anyone else, but Zhang Haisheng has the qualifications. After all, the road is difficult and those who achieve it come first. As an enlightened heavenly being, Zhang Haisheng is equal to Zhao Xianzhen. As expected, Zhao Xianzhen was not angry at all, and only said, in this case, I will invite my Taoist friends another day and say goodbye. After Zhao Xianzhen said this, he just nodded slightly to everyone and hurried away with the two Taoist boys. This move undoubtedly caused everyone to whisper again. It is nothing more than flattering words such as being more optimistic about Zhang Haisheng and praising him as a true gentleman with love and righteousness. But no one noticed that Zhao Peng was staring at Zhang Haisheng at this moment, and his eyes were about to burst into flames. After being ignored again and again, Long Hushan Celestial Master is fine, and so are others. It's not because although Hunshan Prison has privileges, its official position is humble. Without Gu Peiwen, who is in charge, naturally no one will look at him seriously. Thinking of this, Zhao Peng suddenly discovered that the position of the Hunshan supervisor may not be as he wished. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 690. Deep between the virtual and the real, in the single-door courtyard, Su Tong heard the old Taoist's laughter before he walked in the door. Ha 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 ha, this time I am the landlord, so wait until you lose your pants. I saw the old Taoist holding a big and small king, 4K, 4A, plus a set of straights. It can be said that Tianhu is in hand and I have the world. On the other hand, Shuigui and Song Lao, who were sitting in front of them, looked at the cards in their hands, their expressions falling into deep solemnity. Master, Master, I'm back. At this time, Su Tong opened the courtyard door and walked in, specially carrying meat cakes made by Sun Yang and a pot of old wine. Seeing Su Tong enter the door, the master's eyes lit up and he threw the cards in his hand on the table. No more fighting, my disciple is back. Hey, hey, my king is fried, my king is fried. The old Taoist glared, and Mr. Song on the side also said helplessly, business matters, let's play cards next time. When the old man heard this, his mouth twitched, he blew his beard and glared in anger, and looked at Su Tong angrily. You guys came at the right time. I have been waiting for the cards all night, and you have messed up the cards. Su Tong grinned and held up the meatloaf in his hand. Don't be angry, Taoist master. I'm not here to bring you meatloaf. As he spoke, Su Tong sat at the table, put down his things, and looked at his master. Mr. Song, master, this month's merits. I know your kid didn't come here just because he wanted us. Song Lao pouted and handed a ball of golden merit to Su Tong. Su Tong reached out to take it and almost smashed his hand. The heavy weight made even him feel a little strenuous. During this period, the people of Yuyang are living a good life. Zhang Zhen was dishonest some time ago and I taught him a lesson. Master Song Lao unhurriedly opened the old wine brought by Su Tong, poured it into the glass and took a sip, as if he was talking about something insignificant. But getting Master to speak out, I'm afraid the lesson from Master's mouth is not that simple. Su Tong put away the merits. Such a heavy weight would definitely make the merit bamboo regenerate a section of magical power. How have you been lately? Do you have any idea about the mode occult matter? The master picked up the meat pie Su Tong brought and put it in his mouth to taste it. Not to mention, although it didn't look good, it tasted pretty good. When this matter was mentioned, Su Tong could only grimace and once again reported Lu Ji's tricks to his master. By the way, he briefly talked about what happened in Luoyang City. The three of them listened intently, but after Su Tong explained everything clearly, they fell silent. Zhang Haisheng, Zhang Sheng cooked the sea and went against the will of heaven. Master Shuigui spoke first for a moment, but he was talking to himself, as if he was thinking about something. The old Taoist on the side twirled his fingers and asked after a while, the two Fei Yuan you mentioned once said that Zhang Haisheng is his destined person. The master's focus is relatively simple, bring some more of this meat pie next time. Seeing that the three people had different focuses, Su Tong blinked, ignored the master's suggestion to throw away the meat pie, and looked at the master. Master, is there any problem? Shuigui wanted to explain, but after thinking for a moment, he looked at the old man aside. You go ahead. The old man plucked his fingers and confirmed a few questions with Su Tong. For example, Doi Yuanqi also said something about the destined person, or more information about this person, including whether Su Tong saw his body with his own eyes, etc. After all these questions were asked clearly, the old man slapped his thigh. You have been deceived. Ah! Su Tong looked at Lao Dao with his mouth wide open. The old Taoist stopped beating around the bush and stated the problem directly. As you said, how can he be willing to die after he has found a destined person? If my prediction is correct, this person must have made a prophecy on Zhang Haisheng. Word. Suspended animation. Su Tong raised his eyebrows slightly, and he was already planning to dig a fat and round grave. The old Taoist drank a glass of wine and said, maybe it is real death, but not completely dead. If an enlightened person wants to take another step forward, he will kill the Tao. How to cut the path? Everyone's method is different. As far as I know, if this person is good at prophesying, he must set different prophecies on three people. These three prophecies are all very difficult, and not everyone chosen is free to choose. Moreover, every prophecy almost goes against people's common sense. If it comes true, there will be a chance to kill him. If he misses one move, his soul will be destroyed. As a semi-enlightened person, the old Taoist is also a master of Yi studies. If his soul is returned to its original position, this old guy's strength will never be any worse than that of Gu Pei Yuan. So just listening to Su Tong's description, the old Taoist had already made a guess in his mind. No wonder. Su Tong felt relieved immediately after hearing this. No wonder Gu Pei Yuan would be so kind to Zhang Haisheng. In all likelihood, the prophecies about Zhang Haisheng are related to his enlightenment. So what about the remaining two prophecies? In an instant, Su Tong thought of Nai Haitang. He remembered that there were 3 layers of disaster in this woman's luck. He could see one link after another. How could Gu Pei Yuan not know it clearly? I'm afraid that the second prophecy will fall on Nai Haitang. As for the third prophecy, Su Tong couldn't guess it. This is normal. This kind of thing is related to one's own luck and must not be easily known to outsiders. After the old Taoist finished speaking, Su Tong looked at the master. There's nothing to say. Zhang Haishen's destiny is different. Please be careful. If you notice any change, kill him. Although the master showed no expression on his face, there was a dangerous aura in his calm eyes. This kind of look was very familiar to Su Tong. At the foot of Bamang Mountain, the master had this expression when he killed people. Su Tong wanted to ask more clearly, but the master reached out in advance to stop him from continuing to ask. Let's stop this matter. In the future, you should be more careful when you see people named Zhang. Seeing that the master refused to say anything, Su Tong shut his mouth wisely and did not ask any more questions. However, I still keep this matter firmly in my mind. If master doesn't tell me, there is no guarantee that others will not understand it. Just check it out yourself. By the way, where is the eldest princess? Why didn't I see her today? Su Tong looked around and changed the topic. She asked your master for a vacation, and took the mountain ghosts and zombies from the Mei family to the city of wasted death to find relatives. The old Taoist took a sip of wine and said to Su Tong. Looking for a relative? Yes. Although the emperors of the old Zhou family have many troubles, the princes of the old Zhou family are more prolific than the last. It is normal to have relatives in the underworld. The old Taoist said jokingly. These words made master and master smile. The old emperor Zhu's luck was also strange and rare in thousands of years. Except for Zhu Kongba himself, the other emperors were either short-lived or had no children. On the contrary, the princes who were enfeoffed were as terrifying as sewing machines. After this joke from the old man, the serious atmosphere just now disappeared. Seeing that Su Tong rarely came back, Mr. Song took him aside to endorse. It wasn't until late at night that Su Tong came back from the gap between reality and reality. After returning, Su Tong saw that the night was already deep, so he simply lit the yellow incense and used the incense cloud to lead the way, and his soul came out of his body and came to the entrance of the hall. Meet the headmaster. As soon as they saw Su Tong coming back, De Yat and others immediately gathered around and saluted Su Tong. This is your incense merit. Su Tong gave some of the incense merits to Dia and the others. Because of the 5 black mezons, Su Tong also specially gave an extra part to Dia, so that Dia would be responsible for feeding these fur balls. Then he led everyone and quickly walked outside the hall to the 7 treasure bamboo. They looked at the top and bottom sections of this crystal clear bamboo, which were already shining with golden light, and there were diamond marks flashing. The reason why I was able to survive from Lu Ji's hands in the 6 Arts Hall was largely due to the diamond seal. But with the Vajra seal alone, next time I meet Lu Ji, my own means may not be enough. At this moment, the only thing that can be done is to quickly improve the strength. It's just that it's difficult to enter the Tao. I'm afraid it won't be easy to improve in practice. I can only start with shortcuts, such as the 7 treasure bamboo in front of me, and the souls of the masters of the Motuo sect. Thinking of this, Su Tong began to look forward to it. He took the incense merits given to him by his master and weighed them in his hands. This is the merit accumulated in 2 months, which can be counted in the tens of thousands. And the quality is extremely high, and it even has the blessing of faith, which is far higher than the quality of merit obtained by Fu Xian's formation. Su Tong gritted his teeth and threw half of it into the 7 treasures bamboo in front of him. Boom! As soon as the golden incense merit touched the transparent bamboo on the ground, golden light suddenly burst out, and bursts of bells echoed in the airs. The headmaster has appeared. De Yat and others gathered around Su Tong, staring at the golden light shining in front of them with wide eyes, and in their hearts they were looking forward to the appearance of the next magical power. Kaka kaka. The bamboo trembled slightly, as if it had grown an inch taller. At the position of the second bamboo joint, strands of golden threads were connected to form a strange golden rune, which emitted a blazing light. Amitba. The seemingly familiar voice echoed in my ears again. De Ya's eyes shone brightly, thinking that she must ask the monk for clarification this time. For a moment, the sound of Buddha's voice was booming in front of them, and it was extremely sacred. In everyone's sight, the handsome monk from last time appeared in front of them. He was dressed in red cassocks and had white hair on his forehead. He was like an immortal monk reborn and shining on the world. Great monk. Although each of them can see the monk treats each person differently. In front of Su Tong, the monk just raised his head, stretched out his hands, and grabbed the sky. Suddenly, the sky was dark and the ground was dark. Two shining stars were caught by the monk in his palm. Su Tong couldn't help but look at the monk's palm, and suddenly felt a stinging pain in front of his eyes, as two stars pierced directly into his eyes. The sudden severe pain made Su Tong tremble all over, but after his first experience of the Vajra seal, he no longer frowned, but relaxed his mind and carefully understood what was in his eyes. Gradually, the name of this magical power emerged in my mind: Magical Eye Power. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 691. God's eyes illuminate people, and they can see all the Dharma in the world, break through the confusion of evil spirits, and can hide away from all kinds of changes. Su Tong felt something in his heart, and his eyes were like a blazing fire, and he glanced around him. In an instant, his eyes were like lightning, penetrating through the entrance of the hall and beyond the door. Seeing Guoyi and Sun Yang standing in the corner, not knowing what to say, seeing Guoyi's troubled expression and Sun Yang's loving eyes, he knew that he must be doing something embarrassing behind his back. Turning his eyes again, he saw the followers sitting in the room, drinking and gambling. Su Tong tried to look further, and even peeked directly outside the other courtyard, where Dai Yud was scolding several servants of the imperial post. Then Su Tong averted his eyes and said to himself, "Good guy, this thing is better than clairvoyance. It is simply a magical tool for peeping." Looking back at Dayat and the others, I found that all of them had golden eyes, shaking their heads and not knowing what they were looking at. Ahem, don't stare at others when you have nothing to do. Su Tong coughed twice, thinking that next time he saw the eldest princess, he would also want to see what color underwear this girl was wearing. "Headmaster, how about we work together and water it again? See if there are any other magical powers." Daya came up to make noises. "This magical power is so easy to come by. It requires neither chanting nor meditating. It is simply a must-have artifact for lazy people like them." Su Tong was naturally a little moved when he heard this. But after thinking for a moment, he still didn't continue watering. "The merits of incense have too many functions, and I also need this thing in other places. Moreover, although magical powers are good, in the final analysis, they can only play a supporting role. In the final analysis, you still need corresponding strength to reach the extreme. Rather than investing all of it in Kaibeo bamboo, you might as well keep some of it just in case. Anyway, Kaibeo bamboo is here, so there is no need to rush." When Kaibezu disappeared again, Su Tong had already led Daya and the others to the immortal furnace. He took out the small soul coffin from his arms and saw that it was filled with dense soul beads. In the battle of Luhi, Gaozhou and Guzibai each got what they needed. Zhang Haisheng killed all the Motuo masters gathered there and got the heads. And he used the soul arresting technique to arrest the souls of these people. It can be said that the value of most of the masters of Motuo cult has been basically used. If it weren't for the corpses that need to be used to show off to the bad guys behind, I'm afraid those corpses will be taken back by Gaozhou and turned into zombies. With these alchemy materials, Su Tong also began to try to use the blessing of the sky. It's just an effect. Su Tong couldn't help but want to run back to find his master and cry. Fortunately, the more than 10 masters are all at the Grand Master level after all, and Fu Hongzhen is a master at the Taoist realm. Even if the effect of the Hand of the Sky is not triggered, with the blessing of the immortal furnace, the delivery is not too bad. 4 pills that can improve cultivation, 1 for each of Su Tong and Daya. 2 superpower pills, the fire-preventing pill and the earth escape pill. As its name suggests, the effect of the pill is to ward off fire and use earth escape within a limited time. Fortunately, there are still good elixirs, such as the elixir refined using Fu Hongzhen's soul, damage and strengthening the sky pill. This thing is a bit interesting. Su Tong read the entry. Tianjin replenishing pill for damaged tendons. It is said that diligence can make up for clumsiness, but as everyone knows, the way of heaven makes up for what is lacking when there is more damage. The eater will suffer a huge internal injury every 10 seconds, but his own skill will rise to a higher level. Duration, N. Note, as long as you hold on long enough, this elixir is enough to make you surpass the gods. Su Tong looked at the annotation on the elixir. This elixir was quite interesting, but it only caused damage once every 10 seconds, which most people couldn't handle. If he wanted to rely on this elixir to fight against Lu Ji, he would probably have to surpass ghosts before he could become a god. What's more, once this elixir is taken, it lasts semi-permanently, making it very troublesome to remove it. After thinking for a moment, Su Tong carefully put the elixir away. If it came to a last resort, he would not be pressed to the ground and rubbed by Lu Ji like last time, and he would have to run away. At this time, Su Tong noticed someone knocking on the door, and his soul returned to his position. He sat up from the bed, opened the door and saw that it was Guo Yi. "Your Majesty, the Great Protector is here." Guo Yi is a very traditional person. Even though it was because of Su Tong that Unzi taught him boxing skills, Guo Yi was still very grateful to Unzi even without the title of master and disciple. "So when I address you inside, I am much more polite than before." "Hey, why did he come just now? Come on, go invite him in. It's been several days since the 6th Art Museum." Su Tong deliberately didn't go to Xiangshan Temple to listen to UnlimitedFlow's chanting in the past few days. He just wanted to wait for the bald donkey to come to the door and explain to him why he didn't come to the 6th Art Hall. Unexpectedly, after waiting for so many days, Unzi came to look for him, which really surprised Su Tong. However, when Su Tong walked into the courtyard, he was still startled. He saw Yunbian and two Buddhist monks sitting on the stone bench in the courtyard. But Yun's left arm was wrapped in thick gauze. "Master is injured." Su Tong couldn't help but be very surprised when he looked at the wound on Yun Xiang's arm. Unzi was about to explain, but he just looked at it intently, supernatural vision. Immediately, Yun stood up from the chair and circled around Su Tong. A look of joy appeared on his face for a moment. "Amitabha, your Majesty is really destined to be my Buddha. He has cultivated a magical power so quickly. He is truly the most virtuous person in the world and the best in the world. I have to say that Yunbian is a very literary person." Although he didn't understand this rainbow fart, it sounded much more comfortable than awesome, 666, and shit. However, it cannot be said that Yunbian is simply flattering. It is mentioned in the Buddhist Diamond Sutra that there are 5 types of eyes between heaven and earth, namely the physical eye, the heavenly eye, the wisdom eye, the Dharma eye, and the Buddha's eye. The divine eye is one of the Buddha's eyes. There is also one called Tianyan tongue. Even among Buddhist monks, it is difficult for them to cultivate 2 magical powers in their lifetime. Even Chen Xianzang, his master, only cultivated 5 magical powers. There are only 3 types of sources themselves. That's why I was so excited and spoke so highly of Su Tong. If Su Tong's mission hadn't included participating in the Xiantan Dharma Assembly on behalf of Tian, Unzi's compliment alone would have been enough to meet the conditions for completing the mission. Ha ha ha, I just chanted the sutra casually, slept for a while, and completed the practice. Master, don't be so surprised. Maybe I will be able to practice another one in a few days. As soon as Su Tong said these words, Unzi and the 2 monks behind him were stunned. "Good guy, you have developed a Buddhist magical power by chanting sutras and sleeping, and together with our ancient Qingdeng Buddha, you recited sutras day and night. Did you all recite them to the dog? Speaking of which, the Great Protector is." Su Tong pointed to the arm on the side of Yun. Unzi was the best in the world, and anyone who could hurt him must also be among the best. "It's Lu Ji." Sure enough, Su Tong's suspicion was confirmed. After Yunbai said the person who hurt the person, he explained to Su Tong about the Liuyi Museum. His Majesty felt something on his mind that day and summoned him to the palace. He sensed something was wrong and entrusted Princess Changping to help with the summons. But he didn't expect Lu Ji to be so arrogant. When he left the palace, it was already late, and he learned about Lu Ji from the Buddhist disciples. So the great protector caught up with Lu Ji and fought with him. The injury on his arm was left by Lu Ji. In the past few days, Unzi had been recuperating from his injuries. He didn't come to visit until today, which could be regarded as an explanation to Su Tong. What about Lu Ji? Su Tong didn't care about Yuan Xiang's arm injury, but he was particularly concerned about Lu Ji's injury. Yuan Bai shook his head. But the poor monk did not gain any advantage in the fight with him. Although Lu Ji was injured, he was not seriously injured. Yes, Su Tong heard it, and he chased you and had a fight, but he still didn't win? Got a beating instead? Fortunately, when I first met you, Gu Pewen blew you away, but you looked like an embroidered pillow. Of course, Su Tong still didn't say these words, but the look of disgust in his eyes greatly irritated Yuan Bian, who could only explain, what Lu Ji practiced is incompatible with my Buddhism, but if my luck in Buddhism increases. When he said this, Su Tong already understood the purpose of Unzi's visit. It turned out that he was urging him to write poetry. De Zhou had a fanatical admiration for poets and literati. Poetry is the fastest way to spread knowledge in this world. Buddhism is now promoted by the grace of saints, but when people mention Buddhism, their eyes are so frivolous. Even if Chen Xianzang returned from his journey to the West and brought many scriptures, it would still be difficult to change people's views on monks. Therefore, Yuanzi now needs Su Tong to write poems. It's just that Unzi probably didn't know that with the little ink in Su Tong's belly, it would be difficult for him to write poetry, let alone write poetry. But this matter is simple. After all, children who don't study well will often know a top student who studies well. For example, Zhang Haisheng. So Su Tong pretended to think for a moment and nodded in agreement. But before Unzi and others were happy, Su Tong said, writing poetry is a very laborious thing. I have been obsessed with Buddhism recently. Such a laborious thing, great protector, look. The corners of Unzi's mouth twitched, and even the two monks behind him couldn't help but secretly shake their heads. Fortunately, Yuan Xiang knew that Su Tong was a master who never saw rabbits but never let go of hawks, so he put a box on the table and hurried away with the people. Before leaving, he did not forget to remind Su Tong, the poetry writing must be done quickly, as the Xiantan conference is about to begin. Early the next morning, Su Tong jumped out of the carriage outside the gate of Hunshan prison. He raised his head and looked at the door plaque of Hunshan prison. He couldn't help but take a deep breath and walked inside. As a result, he was stopped before he even reached the door. This is Hunshan prison, outsiders are not allowed to enter without permission. Su Tong took out his name card and sent it up, indicating that he wanted to see Zhang Haisheng. However, he was surprised to learn that Zhang Haisheng had already left. He's gone. Su Tong's eyes widened. Yes, Master Zhao Xianzhen of Longhu Mountain said that he wanted to take him to Longhu Mountain. He already set off yesterday. After hearing the news, Su Tong felt bad. Cursing, he turned around and walked back. Well, no wonder the master said that people with the surname Zhang are not good people. He ate everything and wiped the soles of his feet with oil, but he ran away. Bah, you scumbag. Ah, Akiu. On the official road, Zhang Haisheng, who was riding a fast horse, suddenly sneezed uncontrollably and rubbed his nose with his fingers. It's cool on this mountain road, and there is an occasional cold wind, but do you need to put on some extra clothes? On the side, Zhao Xianzhen was riding on a big green bull, holding a fly whisk, looking at Zhang Haisheng with a smile. Master Zhao is joking, but if we continue on this road, I'm afraid we won't be able to reach Longhu Mountain even if we walk for 2 years. Zhang Haisheng looked at the secluded forest path in front of him and squinted at Zhao Xianzhen. Ha ha ha. Zhao Xianzhen stroked his beard gently, laughed loudly, and said, "The mountain is not high, if there is an immortal, it is famous. The water is not deep, if there is a dragon, it is spiritual. Longhu Mountain and Luoyang are thousands of miles away. Instead of running up an empty mountain, it is better to be a poor Taoist traveling around the mountains and rivers, wouldn't it be a pleasure?" Zhang Haisheng frowned, but he was keenly aware of the meaning of Zhao Xuanzhen's words. "Kong Shan, isn't the heavenly master not in Longhu Mountain?" This time it was Zhao Xuanzhen's turn to be stunned, and after a moment he nodded and said, "Sure enough, a boy can be taught. To tell you the truth, the heavenly master has gone down the mountain a long time ago. As the saying goes, the small hermit hides in the mountains and forests, and the great hermit hides in the market. This worldly world, it's all about practice. Then where is the heavenly master?" Zhang Haisheng suddenly became excited. "The old celestial master of Longhu Mountain is a godlike figure in rumors. More importantly, his master once said that he has a great relationship with the Zhang family of Longhu Mountain. Perhaps this relationship can be learned from this old celestial master. Got some clues from his mouth." It was precisely because of this that Zhang Haisheng agreed to leave Luoyang with Zhao Xianzhen. Although leaving Luoyang at this time is a little unnatural for Su Tong, a teammate. But in comparison, my own affairs are more important. I don't know either. When mentioning this issue, Zhao Xianzhen also showed a rare expression of embarrassment. He didn't lie. The heavenly master came down from the mountain 2 years ago, but no one knows exactly when he came down from the mountain. When people found out, they just saw the souvenir left by the old master in his quiet room. I thought that the heavenly master would come back in a few months. As a result, after 2 years, there was no news from the heavenly master, so Zhao Xianzhen had to go down the mountain to search for him personally. Passing through Luoyang, he was called into the palace to talk to His Majesty, and then left Luoyang city with Zhang Haisheng. So Zhao Xian really didn't know where the heavenly master was. He. Zhang Haisheng was instantly made angry and laughed. "In this case, I dare to ask Tianqi Zhao, do you know where Tianqi is at this moment?" "Have no idea." Zhao Xianzhen shook his head. "If you don't know, how can you find it in the vast world?" Zhang Haisheng was already a little angry in his heart. Wasn't it obvious that this was a trick on him? Zhao Xianzhen gently held her long beard with her fingers and said confidently, "I am a poor man with no talent, but he is also the master of the Longhu Mountain Genji Alliance. How can I not find someone?" As soon as these words came out, Zhang Haishen's heart moved, and the anger in his heart subsided a little, thinking about it. Where is Longhu Mountain? The source of the great avenue of the world. Since Zhao Xianzhen is the real person in charge of the contemporary celestial master of Longhu Mountain, and since he came down the mountain to find the old celestial master, how could he not have the means to find him? However, he was still more cautious and asked, "I don't know what the method is." "Ha ha." Zhao Xianzhen jumped off the back of the big green ox, and saw him take off his shoes in a hurry, and looked at Zhang Haisheng sideways. "Have you ever heard of throwing away your shoes to find the way?" "Throw your shoes to find the way." Zhang Haisheng blinked, and his mind couldn't turn around for a moment. At this time, Zhao Xianzhen grinned, waved her hand, and threw up the shoes in her hand. Then, the shoes are hanging on the tree. 2 flowers bloom, one on each side. Not to mention Zhang Haisheng and Zhao Xianzhen were looking at the shoes hanging on the tree branches. At this moment, Su Tong was riding in the carriage with a depressed look on his face, thinking about his memory with an distressed look on his face, and wanted to try it out to see if he could compose a poem. After thinking about it, he patted his forehead and said, looking at the golden Buddha from a distance, "It looks thinner at the top and thicker at the bottom. One day, if you turn it upside down, it will look thinner at the bottom and thicker at the top. This poem is quite good. Su Tong thinks he should stop thinking about it. I am afraid that as soon as this poem comes out, the great monk Yuanzi will also come to hunt him down. Your Majesty, are we going back to the inn now? Guo Yi sat on the shaft of the car, lifted the curtain and asked Su Tong. What are you going to do? Do you want to write poems? Su Tong rolled his eyes and was very upset. He didn't want to go back, so he walked out of the carriage, jumped out of the car and said, how about you go back and I go for a walk by myself? It will save you the trouble of always sneaking around with others. Ah! Guo Yi was startled and immediately understood what Su Tong meant. He immediately blushed and jumped out of the car. After leaving the carriage to another entourage, he quickly walked to Su Tong's side and explained hesitantly. Your Majesty, you have misunderstood. Sun Yang and I are innocent. Seeing Guo Yi blushing and looking embarrassed, Su Tong felt much better instantly. So he pulled Guo Yi forward and chatted while walking, so, Sun Yang took the initiative. This. Guo Yi lowered his head and nodded after a moment. Then what are you still doing? Is it possible that there is someone else in your heart? No. Guo Yi quickly objected. In fact, Guo Yi also has a good impression of Sun Yang. Although Sun Yang is not beautiful, she has a true temperament that dares to love and hate, which is rare and valuable to Guo Yi. Only. After thinking for a moment, Guo Yi raised his head and said with melancholy, the world is safe and sound, and I will live up to the Tathagata and I will live up to you. Good guy, Su Tong almost couldn't hold back. He drew out his pure yang sword and gave this fool a big blow with the sword. His face darkened. I'll give you a hammer. I think you have been brainwashed by Yuan Tai. Guo Yi's face was full of innocence. Your Majesty, maybe wait for a while, and then I will marry her after I escort you back to Shu. It turns out that the reason why Guo Yi did not dare to agree to Sun Yang rashly was not because he wanted to practice Buddhism, but because he was worried about Su Tong's safety. After all, this is not Shu. Su Tong didn't tell him that the Six Arts Hall incident was such a big deal, but it's impossible for Guo Yi to know nothing about it. He is not as naive as Gao Zhou. He knows in his heart the identity of the Crown Prince and his importance to Buddhism. So before returning to Shu, he had decided to guard the Crown Prince from now on and must send the Crown Prince back to Shu safely. Before that, he didn't dare to think about personal relationships between men and women. I'm afraid that if something happens to me, it will be a blow to Sun Yang, and her reputation will be even worse. After all, a woman has lost 2 husbands in a row. Once Croft's name spreads, the woman will not be able to remarry. I know what Guo Yi is thinking. Su Tong was even more furious. Bah, feudalism, superstition. After saying that, he couldn't help but patted Guo Yi's shoulder sincerely and said, a man who stands upright, how can he be so careless? But when we go back, it will be the same. It lasts forever, so it won't last day and night. Guo Yi lowered his head and said. Seeing that he had not changed his mind, Su Tong could only let out a long sigh. How long can you love someone? 10 years? 100 years? 1,000 years or 10,000 years? It's too long, brother Guo. Loving someone for 10,000 years is too long. For a long time, I only seize the day. As soon as Su Tong said these words, Guo Yi was deeply touched. Just when he was at a loss, a loud cry suddenly came from him. That's so well said. 10,000 years is too long, just seize the day. Everyone turned around and saw an old Taoist priest with a white beard, holding a sail and crying with snot and tears. Those who didn't know thought it was Su Tong who beat the old man. Guo Yi finally felt something in his heart, but was interrupted by the old man's cry. He couldn't help but said angrily, "Who are you?" The old Taoist priest rolled up his sleeves, wiped the snot and tears from his face, and pointed to the long sail in his hand. Su Tong looked up and saw a gossip diagram on the sail, with a line of words written on it: "The Taoism of the world produces dragons and tigers, and I am the immortal on the mountain." Then the old man turned the sail back again and saw a line of words at the back: 5 points for fortune telling, 10 points for solving puzzles, no credit allowed. The old Taoist looked at Guo Yi with a smile, grinning and showing the few remaining big yellow teeth. "Young man, do you want to calculate your marriage? You can't do it without money." "Sorry, I played outside with my children for a while today and didn't pay attention to the time. When I came back, it was too late, so I simply wrote them together." Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Ganxiao. Chapter 692. Is it considered a marriage? Su Tong stared at Lao Dao. He opened the Kimen of Life eye and looked up and down at Lao Dao. He saw that Lao Dao was mediocre. Not only did he have no cultivation, but his own luck was also extremely bad. As long as he was possessed by the god of poverty and the god of decay came to his doorstep, it was a miracle for him that the old Taoist was still alive and well. Such an unlucky person actually tells other people's fortunes. Thinking of this, Su Tong grinned. "Okay, then let's listen to the old god's advice." When the old man saw the business coming to his door, he took Guo Yi's hand and looked at it carefully for a while, then said with a troubled expression, "Wait a moment." As he spoke, he took out an old book with yellowing and worn leather from the bag on his waist, and carefully flipped through it. Now Guo Yi is not happy. "Well, you bring a fortune-telling book with you. Your business is too unprofessional, right?" I couldn't help but snorted coldly, "It's too late to improvise." "Ha ha ha, I am a disciple of Longhu Mountain, how can I trick you?" The old Taoist also disagreed with Guo Yi's ridicule. After flipping through a few pages, he nodded. Yes, this strong man was in trouble when he was young. In his middle age, he transferred his wife and concubines. He got a son without confusion. He was short of wood and water, and his body was broken. But for the rest of my life, I have no worries about food and clothing. As for this marriage, haha, it's a match made in heaven. That's nonsense, old guy, believe it or not, I'll break your legs. When Guo Yi heard this, he immediately became angry. He was a bachelor now, and Sun Yang still had nothing to say about her affairs. How come this old Taoist said that she had become 2 wives and concubines, and there was another one? Even though he is still a severed body, although he is only a Grand Master, he is also a horizontal training Taibao. In addition, the great demon subduing fist taught to him by Yuan Bei means that even a master who has entered the Taoist realm will not be able to kill him easily. In addition, experienced fortune tellers also need to read books. This kind of amateur operation is a charlatan no matter how you look at it. He reached out and grabbed Lao Dao's shoulder, wanting to give Lao Dao a taste of the pain. Otherwise, with this level of work, he would be beaten to death sooner or later if he didn't starve to death. Hey, a strong man has something to say, but a poor man has a weak body and cannot withstand the slap of a strong man. The old Taoist took a look and saw Guo Yi's big hand like a bear's paw grabbing it. His face immediately turned pale and he was trembling with fear. Wait a minute, in that case, the old god might as well do the math for me. Su Tong stopped the angry Guo Yi and thought that this old man was interesting. After all, he was idle, so he might as well have some fun, do some calculations, and see how he was doing. Your Majesty, this is a charlatan. Guo Yi was afraid that Su Tong would be deceived, so he quickly tried to dissuade him. But when the old Taoist saw Su Tong's interested expression, he immediately became confused and hurriedly explained. You're still a little brother who knows things. It's not because I'm a poor person but I'm not good at business. It's because my fortune-telling technique was created by the heavenly master of Longhu Mountain. It has the power to penetrate the heaven and earth, and contains the mystery of the universe, the truth of heaven and earth, and everything. Well, anyway, it is profound, and you need to read it frequently to ensure its fulfillment. Yes, the Taoist priest is right. Su Tong took out a piece of broken silver and handed it to Lao Dao. He opened his palm and asked Lao Dao to show it to him. The old Taoist took a look at Su Tong's palm, then looked through the book, and seemed to have found a corresponding point, and immediately walked up to Su Tong. "Little brother, I can tell by looking at your face that you are a rich and powerful person. Although you are not a general or a minister, you will have no worries about food and clothing in this life, and you will have a son of a dragon or a phoenix when you are 3 years old. But your luck seems to be a little bad recently." At the end of the sentence, the old man looked embarrassed. "Well, I've been having bad luck lately. Does Taoist master have any solution?" Su Tong was very cooperative with Lao Tao's expression, and casually took out another ingot of silver and put it into Lao Tao's hand. The old Taoist held the silver and almost couldn't hold his tongue straight. He nodded immediately, yes. As he spoke, he took out a yellow talisman from his arms and slapped it on Su Tong's palm. "This is the divine talisman of Tianbao. It is Master Zhang Tianqi of Longhu Mountain. It has been used as a talisman for 7749 days, and 99 and 81 heavenly thunders are used as pens. The power of the gods and gods is used as ink, and the 3 pure states of Tai's Hang are used as ink in this name. The talisman enshrined in front of the Sanking statue in Longhu Mountain and receiving incense for 10 years will definitely ensure that the young master is safe and sound, and will have good fortune and turn bad luck into good luck." Everyone on the side rolled their eyes. "I've seen people who brag, but I've never seen anyone who can brag like this." If it weren't for the yellow talisman in Su Tong's hand, which was dirty, old, and full of stains, everyone would almost have believed it. Su Tong was so happy that he threw it into the prop book. Even the entries in the prop book were so perfunctory. A broken piece of paper. Worthless. The old man took the money and ran away. Guoyi looked back at Su Tong. "Your Majesty, you know this is a liar." "I know, but I have nothing to do. Isn't it nice to listen to other people's bragging?" Su Tong has seen many charlatans, but this is the first time he has encountered such an unreliable liar. It is rare for someone to brag so well and dare to brag so much. If he doesn't encourage him, how can he become bigger and stronger? After this little episode, Su Tong was relieved of most of his complaints. It's not like Zhang Haisheng is the only academic master. As the saying goes, having an old man in a family is like having a treasure. Don't I have 3 old guys in my family? 3 cobblers can compete with 1 Zhujiang. I don't believe that these 3 old guys can't even copy a poem. Thinking of this, Su Tong instantly felt in a good mood, and the stress disappeared without a trace. Getting on the carriage, go home. When the carriage arrived at Huangji, before Su Tong could get out of the car, Mr. Dai from Huangji hurried to the carriage. "Oh, my little ancestor, you are finally back." Su Tong opened the car window and saw Dai Yud sweating profusely. He glanced at the gate of Huangji out of the corner of his eye. When he saw Xin Wubai standing outside the door, he probably understood. "Is there a decree from the palace?" "Yes, I've been here a long time ago. I'm just waiting for you to come back," Dai Yud said, and hurriedly helped Su Tong jump out of the carriage, and hurriedly walked outside the imperial post gate. Only then did he see Dai Yud slow down, turn around and tidy up the corners of Su Tong's clothes, and then walk slowly with him. Enter Huangji. Under the sect, the foundation of the world is to think about the people, and it is also the way to follow the great road. The world is Gong Gong, Prince Li Zheng. He must do everything personally, have both virtues and filial piety. He is an example for the kings and grandsons of the world. He was written in the edict and was named the founding uncle of the country. He was appointed as Taikang Temple, Taikang Shaoqing, also gave 300 gold, 3,000 silver, 3 boxes of pearls and jade. Everyone in the huge palace could hear the recitation clearly. Su Tong hurriedly bowed to accept the order. After thinking about it for a while, I learned from Li Zheng's memory that the position of Taikang Shaoqing was an official of the 4th rank, in charge of rituals, music, and sacrifices. This official position is neither big nor small. In theory, he is even qualified to enter and exit the court to discuss politics. Now he was finally promoted and made a fortune. However, the eunuch who was reciting the imperial edict glanced at Su Tong. The saint said that the Suantan ceremony is about to begin. The prince does not need to be distracted. The prince does not need to be involved in court affairs for the time being. He can just concentrate on running his errands. Su Tong understood what it meant as soon as he heard it. But when you think about it, it's natural. The promotion is because he is about to perform Dharma on behalf of heaven and participate in the Suantan Dharma assembly. A low-ranking official serving as a river patrol officer looks nothing like what he looks like. But he cannot allow himself to participate in court affairs. After all, the identity of the Li family and going to court to discuss politics will invisibly send a message to the court. This is a situation that today's saints never want to see. Su Tong was not interested in the dispute between Li and Wu, let alone participated in it. This decision was actually in line with his own wishes, and he happily agreed immediately. Just as he was about to straighten up, the eunuch continued, "Your Majesty, the saint also said so." Su Tong was startled and hurriedly bent down. The eunuch continued, "The saint said, I haven't seen you write poetry for a long time, and I don't know if you have any new works recently." When Su Tong heard this, he immediately began to curse in his heart. He thought with his toes and knew that this must be the bald donkey on the side of the sage who was putting on small shoes for himself again. He could only reply, "Please, father-in-law, please report back to the saint. I have already prepared it, but it is just a little lacking in polish. Give me a few days and I will have a new work." The old eunuch was very satisfied after hearing this, and talked some nonsense with Su Tong before leaving with the others. After the old eunuch left, Dai Yud hurriedly stepped forward and cupped his hands and said, "Congratulations to the Crown Prince, congratulations to the Crown Prince. If the Crown Prince can be valued by the saint, his future prospects are limitless." Dai Yud stepped forward to ask for a blessing, and Su Tong asked Guoyi to take out some red envelopes and distribute them to Dai Yud and others as usual. This made Guoyi feel bad. Even if he didn't have much money, he still had more than 10 taels of silver. After sending Dai Yud away, Su Tong could only turn around and walk to the room, close the door, and start composing poetry behind closed doors. A few days later, in a village outside Luoyang City, a deep sigh was heard. "Are you sure he's really not dead?" "Yes, it's absolutely true. This boy is still alive, and he was wearing a cassock in front of Tanhua Tower. He looked half layman and half monk, holding 2 courtesan on his arm, and composed a love poem. I want to lean against the green window and accompany you, but I regret that I have misguided my life. I have the intention to go to the forest with my alms bowl, but I have lost my love for a beautiful woman." Looking at the poems handed over by his subordinates, Lu Ji couldn't help but laugh. He is really a wanderer. Last time in the 6 Arts Hall, he failed to kill this kid, but instead killed many generals. Even his right-hand man, Fu Hongjun, was killed. Although he successfully broke through, he also suffered a lot of injuries. Now it would be difficult to kill this kid. "Leader, do you want to?" Someone stepped forward and put forward his own idea. Since he couldn't do it openly, he would attack secretly. The leader's victory-hating technique was something few people could match nowadays. He might as well use this method to ruin this kid's luck first. But this idea was directly rejected by Lu Ji. "Although I am tired of winning, I am not a tired person after all. The art of being tired of winning is too weird and overbearing, and it can backfire on its master if you are not careful. But master, yesterday this boy wrote this poem, and now he is called the Love Monk. He is already famous. If he continues to torment, the fate of Buddhism. Lu Ji didn't think so, but if he wanted to make another move now, he might not have the right chance. Just as Lu Ji was in a dilemma, someone walked in from outside the door. It was none other than Shi Jin. When everyone saw Shi Jin, they all called him the leader of the hall. Now Shi Jin was already Lu Ji's disciple. The coiled dragon stick in his hand was his most proud asset. As a reward for the helmsman, he killed Lu Ji. Bad coach Cao was hung, such a record is enough to shut everyone up. Master, Gi Lao already has news about the coffin. Shi Jin stepped forward and handed a special machine box to Lu Ji. Seeing this, Lu Ji immediately took the machine box over. After twisting his fingers on it a few times, it popped out with a click sound. A note. Lu Ji picked up the note, unfolded it and took a closer look. His face suddenly brightened and darkened. When everyone saw this, they didn't know what happened for a moment, but seeing that Lu Ji's expression was not right, someone asked, "Cult leader, what's the problem?" Lu Ji didn't explain, but just handed the note in his hand to everyone on the side. Everyone took it with both hands and took a look at it in the sunshine outside. Their expressions changed drastically. Why is it this kid again? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 693. Brother Yuan, what are you doing again? Oh, study a little something. Yuan Shushi looked back at Wan Rong, who came in carrying a bamboo basket, with a smile on his face. What is it? Wan Rong put down the bamboo basket in her hand and leaned over. The fragrance of the girl hit her, which made Yuan Shushi fascinated for a moment. He couldn't help but take a sip, and suddenly felt dizzy. He was so dazed that he almost sat down on the ground. Fortunately, he woke up quickly, otherwise he would have been very embarrassed. Yuan Shushi calmed down and did not dare to look at Wan Rong again. He quickly changed the subject and said, "This is called Qianmo, but it's not the mold for making money, is the mold that common people use to paint yellow frames. I thought it was something. Isn't it just a wooden mold? Why do you sit here with a sad face? I haven't seen you looking for me in the past few days." Wan Rong covered her mouth and smiled softly. Yuan Shushi couldn't help but smile bitterly when he heard this. How can it be so simple? This thing has been destroyed. It is not difficult to repair it, but it will be difficult because there is no material. Humph, I don't believe there are any rare treasures in the world in Ziwei City. I can't even find a piece of repaired wood. Wan Rong said, unconvinced. This is not an exaggeration. It is the residence of a saint, and all nations come to court. Every year, countless rare treasures are brought into the palace. If there is only one stone in the world's wealth, I am afraid that this Ziwei palace will monopolize 8 buckets. It's not a precious thing, but it's a rare thing. What I want is a piece of gloomy wood turned from acacia wood. I thought it was something. This thing is rare, but it's not a precious treasure. I'll ask my sisters in the palace when I go back and ask you if I have one. I'll lend you a piece. Yuan Shushi perked up after hearing the words, but his face changed drastically as he thought, you must never steal the palace's property privately. At the least, you may be exiled, and at the worst, you may be beheaded. Just as you must never do such a stupid thing. Seeing Yuan Shushi being so serious, Wan Rong felt warm in her heart. Don't worry, the palace has its own rules, but it's not without flexibility. I have a sense of propriety. After saying that, before Yuan Shushi could refuse, Wan Rong took his hand and walked aside, took out the food in the basket and put it on the table. Eat quickly, these are all meals cooked by me myself. Yuan Shushi looked at the food, and his face burst into laughter. He picked up the bowl and chopsticks, picked up a piece of tofu and put it in his mouth, eating it with gusto. It's so delicious. If you leave the palace in the future, I will eat your food every day. As if startled, the smile on his face gradually dimmed. He looked at the magpie on the tree outside the door and looked at the sky outside longingly. Okay, if we wait until that day, we will find a place with beautiful mountains and clear waters, and by 2 acres I will use the land to raise geese and grow vegetables, and I will cook for you every day. Yuan Shushi didn't notice anything wrong and just said, "That's really great. Oh, by the way, the Crown Prince has written a new poem, did you know?" Wan Ru seemed not to want to talk more about this topic, so he immediately interrupted and mentioned Su Tong's poem. "I want to lean against the green window to accompany you, but I regret that I have gone astray in this life. I have the intention to go to the forest with a begging bowl, but I have lost the love of a beautiful woman." Like a cuckoo, she was leaning against the doorframe, the sun shining on her black hair was shining brightly. Yuan Shushi didn't know poetry, he was just a carpenter, but when he turned around and saw Wanyu by the door, his eyes suddenly blurred. Got up. I don't know how long it took before Wanru came back to her senses. When she saw Yuan Shushi looking at her dreamily, she couldn't help but cover her mouth and smile. Idiot. After that, he went out and said, "I'll come find you again in a few days." Listening to Wanru's voice, Yuan Shushi was holding the bowls and chopsticks alone, and then smiled stupidly for a moment. "Okay, I'll wait for you forever." "Master, what is the most beautiful love?" "The most beautiful things make you smile when you think about them." "Master, you said I am so beautiful, why do I always meet those unfaithful men?" "When the flowers are blooming, they attract butterflies and bees, but occasionally they also attract flies. In Tanhua building, Su Tong has been here drunk and dreaming for almost 3 days. Dressed in a red cassock and looking nondescript, he became the center of attention. The girls rushed forward one after another, saying they wanted to get the scriptures, but Su Tong didn't know if the scriptures they were talking about were what he thought. Nowadays, everyone in the huge city of Luoyang knows that the Crown Prince Li Zheng is also known as the Love Monk. Prince Gong, a relative of the emperor, a contemporary poet, plus the title of an infatuated monk. These titles are blessed on a person. Just hearing his name, you can feel the heavy story behind it. And this is exactly what boys and girls love most. As a result, in the past 3 days, the price of flower words outside Tanhua building has increased several times, but it is still difficult to find a word. The threshold of Tanhua building is about to be trampled to pieces. Some women even sneaked in disguised as men, just to see what the love monk looked like. The happiest people are the boss of Tanhulo and the great monk Yuanzi. The former got a cramp in his hand from making money, and the latter was already smiling from ear to ear when he saw Buddhism's increased luck. With the help of wine, Su Tong waved his cassock and walked towards the door, shouting, "I would like to transform into a stone bridge." The high-pitched shouts made everyone in Tanhua Tower quiet down. They silently looked at the prince's slightly red eyes, with tears shining in his hazy eyes. He looked at the girl in front of him with an extremely gentle voice, "Xiao Wu. After hundreds of years of wind and rain, I just hope that one day she can walk across the bridge." A teardrop slipped from the corner of his eye. In an instant, the girl in front of her went blank, and she almost passed out from happiness. These touching words of love aroused a burst of sadness in the hearts of those girls, as if they had seen the crown prince and that girl's unparalleled love. But after saying this, Su Tong lay on the ground and fell asleep. If Guoyi hadn't picked up Su Tong quickly and ran away, the girls behind him, whose eyes were glowing green, would have probably rushed up and eaten the hot topic alive. Only when Guoyi loaded Su Tong onto the carriage, waved his riding whip, and drove away. Did the girls who had chased him out the door tearfully bid farewell? Drive. Drive. The carriage was speeding on the street, and soon I heard Su Tong's voice coming from the carriage, slow down, I'm almost knocked unconscious. Hearing this, Guo Yi pulled the reins to slow down the carriage. He opened the curtain with his fingers and saw that Su Tong had taken off his cassock. His eyes were clear and he didn't look as drunk and crazy as before. Guo Yi was not surprised at all when he saw this. After all, the prince's strength was far superior to his own, so how could he be drunk with just a few jars of Huangliang wine? Your Majesty, the saint asked you to compose a poem, so you compose a poem, why bother yourself so much? Guo Yi expressed his doubts. In front of a straight man like him, it was obviously impossible to understand Su Tong's actions. Do you know what it means to manage a character? You just rely on copying, to compose poems. Monk Yuanzi has it today and will ask for it tomorrow. But after I manage the character, I will be a walking spokesperson. If I don't compose poems, I can't even lie down. It can have an effect. Su Tong rolled his eyes at him. Besides, he didn't find this job hard at all. Isn't that the fun of acting? Don't understand? I just feel weird. Guo Yi followed Su Tong from Shu to Luoyang. Naturally, he knew in his heart that his eldest son should not talk about love, because the prince was afraid that this unlucky son would do something to deceive his father, so he had always strictly disciplined him. He had never even entered a brothel before Luoyang, so where could any love come from? Seeing the confusion in Guo Yi's heart, Su Tong shook his head and took out the hookah pipe from the props book, put it to his mouth slowly and started smoking. When I was very young, I met a magician who liked to arrange these things that were not available, but many people believed in him. Later he told me that the biggest problem with people is that they like to indulge in their own emotions. It doesn't matter what I say. It doesn't matter whether I have a story. They have already thought of the story for me in their minds. Do you understand? Guo Yi still shook his head. Seeing that he didn't understand, Su Tong could only change his explanation. This world is actually very bitter. Sometimes I know it is false, but I am willing to believe it. It is just to comfort myself. Oh. When Guo Yi heard this, he immediately understood. He turned around and muttered to himself, isn't this the same as my erotic dream? In this volume, only the Suantan Dharma assembly is left. This section of the story is about to come to an end. I will take a day off tomorrow to let me sort out my thoughts. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 694. The carriage drove slowly along the streets of Luoyang City. It was getting slightly late, but the streets were still very lively. Along the street, you can see every household hanging bright lanterns in front of their homes. Tomorrow night is the Suantan Dharma Assembly. Not only envoys from various countries, but also masters from temples in many foreign countries are also arriving one after another. In the past 2 days, Luoyang has cancelled the curfew again, and the saint has granted amnesty to the world, pardoning taxes in most places. As soon as the Dharma conference begins, the whole country celebrates together, and the scene of a prosperous era is enough to be recorded in the history books. For such an important event, Su Tong smelled something bad. He lifted the car window with his fingers, and there were many people walking on the street, but when he glanced around, there were many people with special skills around him. For example, the old man selling noodles in front of me had bulging temples on his forehead. Although he was not a master, he was still a master of martial arts. At least he was a first-class master in the world. There was also a middle-aged man selling candied haws, holding a stick in his hand, which looked just like an ordinary bamboo stick, but Su Tong could tell at a glance that the stick weighed at least dozens of kilograms, and he could easily hold it in his hand. It is not easy to imagine that its strength is not easy. It seems like the bad guy is really angry this time. Su Tong murmured that the death of the bad handsome Cao Huazheng greatly stimulated the bad people in Luoyang City. The Suantan Dharma assembly was getting closer and closer, but Lu Ji seemed to have disappeared halfway. No matter how hard he searched, no one could find the whereabouts of Lu Ji and other Motuo followers. Not only that, the city of Luoyang has been eerily safe these days, and there are no traces of petty thieves on the streets. This inevitably made Su Tong feel a sense of oppression in the coming storm. It's a pity that he hasn't officially completed the certification team task yet, otherwise he could use the team channel to contact Gao Zhou and Gu Zibai. At this juncture, Zhang Haisheng was taken away by the people from Longhu Mountain. Without this good teammate who sacrificed his life for righteousness, Su Tong had to make plans early. Su Tong was thinking about the variables he might have to deal with in the future. His brows couldn't help but start to knit together. Dong dong dong. Suddenly, bursts of drumming came, interrupting Su Tong's thoughts. He looked up, with golden light flashing in his eyes. Through the carriage, he could see the ever-changing flags on the watchtower 100 meters away. It's Lu Ji. Looking at the changing flags, Su Tong's heart tightened. Someone had discovered the traces of Lu Ji and other members of the Moto cult. Could it be that Lu Ji had been discovered? At this time, there was a sudden commotion on the street. The masters that Su Tong had just observed dropped their livelihoods, drew their swords, and rushed towards the direction of the sound. Your Majesty. Although Guoyi didn't know what happened, when he saw this situation, he knew that something serious seemed to have happened. He immediately opened the car curtain and looked at Su Tong. Go and see. Good. Just when Guoyi was about to turn the car around, Su Tong's heart suddenly tightened, a bad feeling swept through his body, and he immediately shouted, Wait. Guoyi didn't know why, so he could only stop and look at the prince in the car with confusion. I saw Su Tong sitting in the car with a gloomy expression. He took out 3 copper coins from his arms and threw them away. He looked at the divination and then threw them 3 times in a row. Su Tong's face gradually became ugly. Go up and down, escape from the Tianshan Mountains, it's a big disaster. Seeing the hexagram, Su Tong immediately said to Guoyi, go home. Good. Guoyi didn't know the art of yi either, but seeing the prince's serious expression, he urged the horse to go straight to the imperial post quickly. Dong dong dong. The sound of drums on the watchtower along the way continued. Su Tong was always paying attention to the changes in the flags above. Watching the flags constantly sending signals for support, Su Tong felt more and more uncomfortable for some reason. He always felt that there seemed to be a sense of oppression. Rumble, rumble. Looking up at the sky, thick haze enveloped Luoyang City, and bursts of thunder could be heard from time to time. At this moment, everyone in Hunshan prison walked to the observatory and looked at the haze in the sky. Their expressions changed greatly. Senior brother, this celestial phenomenon is wrong. Nai Haitang looked at the haze in the night sky, a solemn look in his almond-shaped eyes. Zhao Peng looked at the celestial phenomena, his expression hard to avoid. Hunshan Jian is in charge of the world and the calendar. The time for the Suantan Dharma assembly was set by my master, Gu Pei Yuan, to the saint early in the morning. He once said that the day would be smooth and prosperous. But the weather in front of us seemed to be about to rain, which was not a good sign. Once the Suantan Dharma assembly is delayed, the saint will blame him, but no matter whether his master Gu Pei Yuan has been buried in peace or not, everyone in Hunshan prison will suffer the consequences. As the supervisor of Hunshan, he was the first to bear the brunt. Master has been observing the astronomical phenomena for decades and has never made any mistakes. Someone must be messing with the secrets of heaven and causing trouble. Zhao Peng was very clear about his master Gu Pei Yuan's methods. The best master in the world, Master Yi Shui, could not have miscalculated such an important date. He just counted with his fingers and realized that something was wrong with the celestial phenomenon. Jianzheng, Jianzheng. At this time, someone hurriedly came over. Jianzheng, something happened, it's Lu Ji. Lu Ji set up a Dharma altar in the western suburbs outside the city to fight with the people of the world. What? Is Lu Ji crazy? Zhao Peng was shocked when he heard this. This Lu Ji must have lost his mind and gone crazy. Does he really think that the imperial army? The army? When Zhao Peng thought of this, it was as if the lion had been taken away from him, and he could no longer speak. Enlightenment is a heavenly being. He remembered that his master once said that all the best in the world are bound by the imperial court, but the bondage itself does not lie in the imperial court's intimidation of these extremely skilled masters, but in their own interests. Just like the old celestial master at Longhu Mountain, his own master said that no one knew what the strength of this old celestial master was. If he really takes action, I am afraid that even the best in the world may not be his opponent. But fortunately, the master is not an individual. He is the master of Longhu Mountain, and his words and deeds are related to the destiny of Longhu Mountain for thousands of years in the future. The same is true for Taoist Tiantong of Chongqian Pavilion, Great Monk Yuan Xiang, including the master, and the commander-in-chief of Shinwabai who sits beside the saint. Only Lu Ji, except for a few places in the world that he could not go to, there was no place in the world that could trap him. Thousands of troops from the imperial court came to attack him, but he couldn't beat him. If he fled far away, no one could stop him. He couldn't have tens of thousands of troops rushing back and forth behind one person. This will not last long, and the court will be unable to bear it. It's like using anti-aircraft guns to kill mosquitoes. Before the mosquitoes are killed, your own home is blown up first. After calming down, Zhao Peng began to think about what he should do next. Strictly speaking, this matter has nothing to do with him. Lu Ji is competing with Buddhism for luck. As the Hunshan prisoner, it would be best for him to stay out of the matter and watch the Buddhist sects fight, but is this really the case? No. If Buddhism loses the battle, the Suantan Dharma assembly will be postponed, which will bring shame on the saints and the court. There is no way the saint would admit that Lu Ji did this, and he would definitely want to find a scapegoat. Zhao Peng's heart trembled at the thought. There was no doubt that Hunshan prison was a ready-made scapegoat. He did not have the skills of his master to make the saint fearful. Quick, rush over immediately and stop Lu Ji no matter what. Zhao Peng gritted his teeth and made up his mind. Even if he called the disciples from Hunshan prison to take out the magic weapon, he would rush there no matter what. Senior brother, I'll go with you. Nai Haitang took out the sword from the room and chased Zhao Peng and others towards the western suburbs. Rumble, rumble. The haze in the sky is getting thicker and thicker. It's like a stone pressing on people's hearts, and the heavy air makes people feel like breathing has become dull. Go home quickly. Before the carriage could stop, Su Tong had already jumped out of the carriage, landed on the ground, and headed straight for his own courtyard. However, as soon as they entered the gate of Huangji, Su Tong and Guoyi smelled the faint smell of blood in the air. Sun Yang. Guoyi was startled and immediately rushed to the other courtyard. He didn't take 2 steps before he saw bright red blood on the ground. Seeing this, Guoyi's face became even more ugly, and he quickly rushed into the courtyard where Su Tong lived. When he opened the door, he saw 2 corpses lying on the ground, which were the family's attendants. Guoyi touched the body with his fingers and found that the body was still warm. It was obvious that the accident had occurred not long ago. Who is so brave and dares to commit murder in the imperial palace? Guoyi raised his sonar breath, and the sound reached the sky, causing dust to fall from the corner of the wall. This was done to scare the murderer on the one hand, and to report the news to others on the other. But when the voice fell, the surroundings were empty and no one responded. Seeing this, Guoyi hurriedly walked towards the kitchen. But as soon as one foot stepped into the courtyard door, the vision in front of him suddenly dimmed, his eyes instantly lost all light, and he could not see anything in the pitch black. The art of hating victory. After all, Guoyi was a veteran. He realized that he was blind, but he didn't panic. He had heard that there was such a witchcraft in the Jianghu, where a blind evil thing was hung on the door beam. As soon as a person entered the door, it was as if his eyes had been taken out and he could not see anything. In the world of martial arts, this technique is called ghost borrowing the eye. Therefore, when Jianghu people enter the door, they usually go in sideways, with one foot in and half of the body following. They look up and down to see that nothing is wrong, and then they come in. If something happens, if you see something hanging on the door, you will often leave or be careful. Today, Guoyi cares about things and gets into chaos accidentally. But after so many years of walking around the world, Guoyi can survive today not only because of his training as a taibao, but also because of his extraordinary courage. When he sensed something was wrong, he immediately did not dare to go any further. He only relied on the images in his memory and his body. Suddenly he jumped up in the air, his legs were like flying on a bridge, and he kicked the door beam with an upside-down golden hook. Boom! There was a sound of cracking bricks and gravel, and large pieces of wood flew around. Before Guoyi landed, the sight in front of him had regained its brightness. When he took a closer look, he found a blind pear marten hanging on the ground. The two eyes of the mink were gone. You dare to show off your tricks here? Guoyi looked at the mink with missing eyes on the bottom of his feet, snorted coldly, took out the fire stick, and threw it casually. He saw that the mink corpse was covered with sporadic flames, and it quickly exploded in an instant. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 695. Ah! As the flames ignited, a scream was heard from the shadows. Flames broke out all over the body of a man with a broken arm, and his whole body began to spontaneously ignite. Even if he rolled on the ground, the flames grew bigger and bigger. Guoyi doesn't understand the art of hating victory, but he also knows the dangers of the art of hating victory. If the suppressed object is discovered, all it takes is a fire, and the caster can burn himself with fire. The soul is gone. Swish swish. Seeing that the victory-wearing technique failed, 3 darts turned into meteors and flew towards him. Before the dart got close, there was a pungent smell wafting over, which was obviously poisonous. When Guoyi saw this, he did not dodge or dodge. His muscles bulged and an invisible aura erupted. Before the dart could get closer, he was blown away by this energy. Kill. 2 slender scimitars fell through the air, and the 2 killers took the opportunity to rush out. Their entire figures were blurred, and the blades were like cyan lightning. Wherever they passed, the ground was directly incinerated into nothingness. There was a faint sound of thunder in the sky and on the earth. Good sword skills. Seeing that the killer was at the level of a master, with superb swordsmanship, even Guoyi couldn't help but praise him. At the same time, he used the great demon subduing fist taught by Monk Yuan Bei, and at the same time, Hong Lian's body urged him to use his extreme power to strike with a heavy punch in the light of the incoming sword. Boom! The expressions of the 2 killers, who were originally confident, suddenly changed, and they felt a powerful, arrogant, and terrifying force burst out. The terrifying power surged like a long river along the blade. Withdraw the knife. Finally, one person hurriedly threw the knife away, and saw that the long knife lost control and immediately flew out. It was stuck heavily on the ground, and the blade pierced the bluestone to the handle. But the other killer hesitated for a moment, and it was too late to throw the knife. The overwhelming force hit his hands and the flesh burst, and the long knife in his hand was grabbed by Guoyi with a flick of his fingertips. Bang! The blade exploded into countless fragments and bounced on the killer, instantly turning the killer into a hornet's nest. The 2 of them are both great masters,
but they are a bit unimpressed when faced with Guo Yi, who trains Taebao in such a tyrannical manner. What's more, Monk Yuanzi taught students according to their aptitude, and what he taught Guo Yi was the top Buddhist boxing technique, the Great Demon Subduing Fist. This boxing technique is a rare boxing technique that is triggered by the power of the physical body. The stronger the physical body, the more amazing the power of the boxing technique. The only thing is that if the physical body is not strong enough, even Buddhist disciples will not dare to practice rashly. But Guo Yi is the Taebao of Honglian. He has practiced the Honglian method to the extreme. When combined with this boxing method, even if the boxing method has not been fully practiced, it is still astonishingly powerful. Damn it, third brother, come out quickly. Seeing the second child's tragic death and his own serious injuries, the leading assassin turned and shouted toward the room, asking the third child to pull the hostage out. Buzz. I heard the door of the room ringing, but it was not the third child who walked out, but Su Tong. He tossed it casually, and a human head rolled out and fell to the ground and hit several wheels. The third child has left. Are you going to capture me without any help, or are you planning to let me skin you with cramps and strip you to pieces until your soul is gone? It turned out that Su Tong noticed something was wrong and used his miraculous powers to see the 4 assassins in his courtyard and Sun Yang and others imprisoned in the room at a glance. Seeing that Guo Yi had rushed forward, he went around to the back and used the pure yang sword to chop off the head of the assassin in the room through the thick wall. Although the other party was also a master, he died in a daze. When he opened his mask, he saw that he was still a Kunlun slave. Not only was he killed by his sword, there were 2 other people who were also Kunlun slaves. Kunlun slaves are tall, naturally strong, and honest and obedient, so they are often regarded as good housekeepers and caregivers. But to truly train a Kunlun slave to the level of a master, the amount of money required is not something that ordinary people can afford. So Su Tong was very curious about who wanted them to assassinate him. Facing Su Tong's inquiry, the thick lips of the Kunlun slave on the ground split open to reveal a row of white teeth. He said to Su Tong in a very skilled Central Plains dialect, "We are waiting for you down there." After saying that, he suddenly pulled out the dagger and swiped it at his throat. Puff. For a moment, blood spattered on the wall, and the corpse stared in Su Tong's direction with a ferocious smile on its face, as if it was issuing a silent curse. It's a pity that Su Tong doesn't accept this trick. He took out the magic bell in his hand and waved his finger lightly. Ding! The quiet and ethereal sound of the bell made everyone in the room tremble suddenly and wake up from their coma. But the corpses of the 3 Kunlun slaves on the ground were not so lucky. The soul confinement technique was activated. Su Tong grabbed them with his big hand and collected all the souls of the 3 people into his palm. Leave it to you. He casually threw them into the hall, and saw Jixiang and Fasai rubbing their hands impatiently, grabbing the 3 of them into the hall, and began to interrogate them. Your Majesty, Brother Guo. Sun Yang and others in the room woke up and rushed out of the room holding onto the doorframe. Sun Yang. Seeing Sun Yang Guo Yi, he didn't care much. He rushed forward quickly and held this woman in his arms. As a result, Sun Yang pushed him away with all her strength, glared at him fiercely, and immediately said, "Your Majesty, it's those Turks." They rushed in and took away the coffin in the ice cellar. "Your Majesty, I'll go after them. They shouldn't be far away." When Guo Yi heard this, he no longer dared to care about his children's personal relationship, and was prepared to go out and chase them. As a result, Su Tong pulled him back. "What are you chasing after? Do you know where they went?" After speaking, he lowered his voice and comforted Sun Yang and the others, "As long as everyone is fine, just collect the bodies of the 2 brothers." But Prince, inside the coffin. Guo Yi didn't know what was inside the coffin, but judging from the way the prince carefully hid the coffin in the ice cellar, there must be something very important in the coffin. "Don't worry, it's a hot potato inside."
Su Tong patted Guoyi on the shoulder to tell him to relax. In fact, I was also very confused. It was a coffin. Cao was hung and the others had reminded themselves at the beginning that someone would definitely snatch this coffin. Now, the people of the shadow group have actually robbed the coffin. Why do these people want a coffin? Is it for a mission? Rumble. The sky was covered with clouds, and bursts of thunder sounded from time to time, just like Su Tong's mood at this moment. What is Lu Ji doing? This demon leader made such a big noise, and for some reason, Su Tong felt very uncomfortable in his heart. Although he has not attained enlightenment, he has given birth to a Tao fruit and has truly entered the realm of Tao. This feeling is by no means groundless. At this time, the followers had already arranged the corpses of their companions. These two people were just unlucky. Sun Yang and the others were knocked unconscious by the sweat medicine while eating. The two of them went to the latrine early, but when they came back, they were bumped into and killed on the spot. The reason why they didn't kill Sun Yang and the others was probably because they wanted to stay as hostages to delay time. Thinking of this, Su Tong already had some clues in his mind and ordered Guoyi to collect the bodies of his brothers. While she was talking, Sun Yang glanced at the corpse and suddenly stood there stunned, her face suddenly turned pale. He wanted to speak, but he opened his mouth but couldn't say a word. He gently pulled Guoyi aside with a shaky hand. Guoyi felt something and thought it was Sun Yang who wanted to say something to him. He took a deep breath and turned around. Sun Yang, let's get married after the Xiantan ceremony. This was also what Guoyi said. Yi thought about it for a long time before summoning the courage to say it. Sun Yang has feelings for him, and she also likes this woman. Just as the prince said, if you love someone, seize the day. After all, the lifespan of a mortal is too short. Seeing Sun Yang's eyes widened and silent, Guoyi's face turned slightly red and he reached out to take Sun Yang's hand. Sun Yang, I. Before she finished speaking, Sun Yang suddenly found the strength and pinched Guoyi's arm with her fingers. She yelled with all her strength, it's a fake corpse. Ah! After hearing this, Guoyi looked back and saw that the fingers of the corpse on the ground were trembling slightly. Immediately, his body suddenly stood up straight from the ground. Ah! The followers were all frightened when they saw this. Presumptuous! Guoyi quickly blocked Sun Yang behind him, his eyes widened, and when he was about to take action, Su Tong stopped his fist. Etc. I saw the corpse slowly turning around. On the originally white face, cyan blood vessels protruded under the skin, and the skin became dark. After the pupils gradually shrank a few times, it slowly opened its mouth and said, "It's me." The talking corpse in front of him was not a fake corpse, but Gao Zhou was using the corpse poison to control him. Lu Ji wants a coffin. The third relic of Dija Temple is hidden in the coffin. You must be careful. Lu Ji's method seems to be aimed at you. Be careful. Before Gao Zhou could finish his words, the corpse's pupils gradually began to dilate, and the protruding veins on the face gradually faded away. After the pupils lost their luster again, it fell heavily to the ground. This time it was impossible to die. Su Tong took a look and saw that the corpse poison Gao Zhou had injected into the corpse had been consumed. This idiot, half of what he said, told me to be careful of a big-headed ghost. Su Tong cursed in his heart and greeted Gao Zhou, a fool, every day, but he became even more alert in his heart. Ding! Main Mission 1 completed, Main Mission 2, Suantan Dharma Protector. At this moment, Su Tong received the long-lost prop book prompt. Main Mission 2, Protector of Suantan. Prevent the Moda cult from completing the luck-seizing ceremony and ensure the normal start of the Suantan Dharma ceremony. Task tip: the ultimate goal of the Moda cult is to call the great demon king Modo, Modada. Mission time, 12 hours. Mission failure, 1/3 of the script points will be deducted, the level will be reduced, and the player will be kicked out of the script world. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 696. Stop Lu Ji. Looking at the main mission, Su Tong couldn't help but look solemn. He had fought against Lu Ji before. How could he not know clearly what kind of strength Lu Ji was? Last time, he was lucky enough to escape by holding Zhang Haishan's waist. It would be too much to force yourself to be tough this time. If Lu Ji is a jungler with a development of 10,000, and he is a shooter with a development of 3,000, and there is a level difference, asking himself as a shooter to stop the jungler from demolishing the tower, he may be killed accidentally. However, space obviously does not provide such unsolvable tasks. Su Tong read the mission carefully, and when he saw the specially marked notes on the mission, he immediately understood. The reminder of the mission is not to directly stop Lu Ji himself, but to stop the Moto cult from seizing luck. The simplest way to prevent the Moto cult from seizing luck is to prevent the evil god Madada enshrined by the Moto cult from appearing in the world, or to kill the evil god Madada, and at the same time complete the task of killing the ghosts and gods. Su Tong analyzed the pros and cons in a short period of time and probably understood his current situation. It was just that Gao Zhou had just summoned him, and Lu Ji's actions seemed to be aimed at himself this time, which inevitably made Su Tong feel a sense of crisis. He couldn't go to the western suburbs, and Lu Ji was waiting there for him to fall into a trap. To defeat Lu Ji's plan, we must first figure out what he is going to do. Thinking of this, Su Tong planned to meet Gao Zhou first and take back the coffin. At this time, Su Tong suddenly noticed something. There was a golden stream of light in his eyes. He activated his clairvoyance and swept his eyes away. He saw a large number of strangers starting to gather outside the imperial post. It seemed that they were coming for him. Stay here, guard the doors and windows, and don't open the door easily no matter who it is. Your Majesty, I'll go with you. When Guo Yi saw this, he knew that the prince might have to act alone, so he couldn't help but feel worried and wanted to follow Su Tong. You stay and guard the rear. Su Tong turned around and glared at Guo Yi. I still want to drink your wedding wine. But Guo Yi followed him unwillingly, but was suddenly kicked back by Su Tong. I can move forward and retreat freely by myself. You, a weakling who doesn't even know Qinggong, will only distract my body. Stay and take care of me in the rear. If one of them has an accident, I will ask you. Guo Yi couldn't say anything else now. He could only issue a warrant and promise to protect Sun Yang and others. Su Tong and Guo Yi looked at each other, then glanced at Sun Yang. The two nodded tacitly. In fact, protecting so many people was a bit risky. The key point is to protect Sun Yang well. Others are at a critical moment. Let's live and die according to destiny. Your Majesty. As soon as I walked out of the imperial post office, I saw a person quietly emerging from the bushes. Su Tong took a look and saw that it was Eunuch Dai. Seeing that there was no one else around, Eunuch Dai emerged and waved to call Su Tong. Eunuch Dai, the assassin is dead, come out. Su Tong stepped forward and reached out to pull Dai Yud out of the bushes. Hearing Su Tong's words, Dai Yud breathed a sigh of relief, but then he cursed, those Turkic brats dared to cause trouble in the imperial post. Our family has sent people to notify the Forbidden Army. We will definitely let these Turkic barbarians do it later death without a burial place. As long as your father-in-law is fine, you can rest in my other courtyard first. I will protect you there to keep your father-in-law safe. Su Tong still has a good impression of Dai Yud. With Guo Yi guarding him, as long as he is not a Taoist master, it shouldn't be a problem. Of course, if something goes wrong, he can only hope that Eunuch Dai will be lucky. Your Majesty, Are you going out? Dai Yud was keenly aware that Su Tong was about to leave the imperial post, and hurriedly took his arm. The prince's rich body must not take risks, let's wait until the reinforcements arrive. Su Tong also wanted to wait for reinforcements, but there were still reinforcements there at this time. I don't know if the eldest princess is back. If not, I will have to ask the old Taoist to take action. Patting Dai Yud's shoulder, Su Tong didn't explain anything. He just remembered his identity as Li Zheng at all times and said sternly, eating the emperor's salary and being loyal to the emperor are matters. I am a relative of the emperor, and I am an official of my great Zhou dynasty. How can we do nothing here? After saying that, he raised his palms towards Dai Yud in front of him and bowed heavily. If I never come back, I would like to ask my father-in-law to prove to the saint that Li Zheng has never failed the emperor's kindness. Take care of yourself, father-in-law. Dai Yud's heart trembled. He had been in the palace for more than 10 years. He was used to seeing the sinister people and deceitful people in the palace. He was also used to others not treating eunuchs like them as human beings. Today, he suddenly received such a great gift. He couldn't help but be deeply touched. His family and country were like this. Why worry? Your Majesty is a great example of righteousness and is a role model for us. I only regret that if our family is not a man, otherwise we will definitely kill that barbarian with the crown prince. Dai Yud raised his hands above his head and bowed heavily to Su Tong's back. Our family is here waiting for the crown prince to make a triumphant return. Su Tong left the imperial post and glanced at the clouds squeezing above his head. A golden light flashed in his eyes, and his eyes could see thousands of miles away. Although this statement is an exaggeration, at least everything around him can be hidden, and it can still be done. Wherever he looked, he could see a large number of masters quietly approaching him in the shadows of the street and behind the backs of the buildings. In addition to the followers of the Moda religion, there were also many barbarians and Turkic warriors among these people. However, these people did not take the initiative, but quietly waited for something. Really? The four killers should have sent out the signal before they died, otherwise these people would not have gathered so quickly. After thinking for a moment, he took out the heaven repairing pill from the prop book. I still have to eat after all. Su Tong held the elixir in his hand, opened his mouth for a moment and held it under his tongue. There was a wax coating on the outside of the elixir, so he was not afraid that it would melt when held in his mouth. If necessary, this might be his way to fight back. Thinking of this, Su Tong stood up and walked towards the Mingtang. At this moment, in the mountains outside the west gate of the city, masters from all walks of life have gathered, and even the men and horses of the Xinwu Guard have arrived. I saw a tall tower standing in the distance in an open field. There are 4 stone sculptures standing under the tower. The expressions of the stone sculptures make people feel inexplicably panicked. They are a naked man with wide eyes and a ferocious face. A dwarf with rabbit ears and a wine bottle in his hand. A woman who is naked but has her chest split open, revealing a red heart. And children with long dog noses and gold ingots in their arms. These 4 stone statues have vivid expressions and strange expressions on their faces. If you are not sure enough, just looking at them will make your heart beat faster and your whole body feel uncomfortable. Lu Ji is determined to fight Buddhism to the end. Someone saw these 4 stone statues and knew how powerful they were, so he explained to everyone. It is said in Buddhist language that the highest state of Buddhism is to turn a blind eye, not hear, have nothing to think about, and speak silently. However, the meanings expressed by these 4 stone statues are completely opposite. If you look at the postures of the stone statues and the objects in their hands, they correspond to each other. It is also the 4 precepts of Buddhism: drinking, sex, and wealth. Hearing this, everyone suddenly realized what was happening and saw Lu Zijao sitting on the high platform in the middle. He held a tin staff made of a girl's leg bone in his hand. He was covered in a black cassock, and his face was painted with devilish patterns in a strange camouflage pattern. The altar behind him trembled and emitted a gleaming light, precisely to reverse the celestial phenomenon. Amitabha, Luji, if you go against heaven like this, you will inevitably die. Monk Yunbian had already arrived with his people. Just looking at Luji standing on the high platform, Monk Yuanzi was shocked and angry. He knew that Luji was crazy, but he didn't expect that this guy would dare to be so crazy. However, he was not sure of victory when facing Luji. In the last battle, Yuanzi knew that he had missed a move, but now, after not seeing each other for a long time, Luji's luck was already showing signs of success. The hidden dragon comes out of the abyss, and the more he fights, the braver he becomes. Since Luji came out of Yuyang City, he has encountered several setbacks. However, this did not damage Luji's luck. Instead, it made him more courageous and arrogant. It is an eternal dragon that swallows the sky and the earth, which is awe-inspiring. Faced with the words of Monk Yunzi, Luji was full of disdain. I started practicing at the age of 10, joined Taoism at the age of 18, and reached the peak of Taoism at the age of 29. Deja Temple was supposed to be my opportunity, but I was hit hard by Gu Pei Yuan. Almost killed me. Now that I have great luck, how can I go against the will of heaven? This is the fate you owe me as a Buddhist. Amitabha. It's useless to talk too much. The poor monk should settle the cause and effect with Donor Lu. Monk Yunbei knew that this battle was inevitable, so he could only pick up his cassock, jump up, and run straight to Luji. Seeing this, everyone retreated. Whether it is Yuan Fang or Luji, the two of them are the best in the world. Once they fight, it will be earth-shattering. If others don't stay away, they will definitely be affected. It was just too late. Before everyone could take a few steps back, they heard a muffled thunder in the void. Suddenly, the sky collapsed, and a terrible storm swept up. Countless sand and stones on the ground were rolled in all directions. The best fights are all arousing the secrets of heaven. For a moment, everyone didn't even see clearly what happened, and they were blown around by the strong wind. Amitabha. Just hearing the Buddha's name in the sky, a 5-foot-long golden body appeared out of thin air in an instant. The Buddha's light was brilliant and dazzling, like a big sun, lighting up most of the sky and sweeping away the dust in the surrounding fields. No form, no life, no self, no heaven. A black smoke billowed up under the Buddha's light, revealing the appearance of the 8-armed Mahadharma. For a moment, demonic clouds billowed, and with the swing of the tin staff in Luji's hand, it turned into chaos. Get away! Seeing the flying sand and rocks in front of them, everyone could only retreat hastily. In panic, Zhao Peng could only grab junior sister Nai Haitang's hand and keep retreating. Someone attacked. At this moment, a scream suddenly came from behind, and in the grey sand and stone, a line of black shadows covered with veils quietly came out from behind, with weapons and sickles in their hands, killing everyone on sight. These people had been prepared for a long time. Their faces were wrapped in thick silk scarves. Under the silk scarves were goggles made of polished crystal flakes. Moreover, they were all experts. Everyone was caught off guard and suffered heavy casualties in an instant. Not good. Zhao Peng sensed that something was wrong and drew out the sword from his waist. He didn't care about whoever stood in front of him and just stabbed with his sword. Several Hunshan prison disciples were caught off guard and died in front of Zhao Peng. Under the sword, kill, kill out. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 697. Boom, boom, boom. There was a dull thunder, and little raindrops began to fall from time to time in the air. The strong wind blew the colorful flags in front of the Mingtang, making a flapping sound. Finally done. In front of the Buddha statue in the Mingtang Hall, Yuan Shushi finished the final stroke. The solemn Buddha in front of him was already in front of everyone. The Buddha had a solemn expression and compassionate eyes. There were 108 gods and Buddhas standing behind him, and his expressions were vivid and lifelike. The eyes of every character are cautious and awe-inspiring. Then he jumped down from the Buddha statue, clasped his hands and knelt in front of the Buddha. "You are leaving?" The questioning voice coming from behind was Wan Rong in a gorgeous dress. "Yes. The Buddha statue has been repaired and my mission has been completed. Naturally, I can't stay in the palace any longer." Yuan Shushi slowly raised his head and saw Wan Rong kneeling in front of the Buddha, clasping his hands and closing his eyes in prayer. For some reason, seeing this scene, Yuan Shushi had a look of annoyance on his face, and grabbed Wan Rong's wrist. "Stop worshipping, it's a pile of rotten wood and stones, what's there to worship? Come with me, let's find a place to live in seclusion, and from now on, no one will be able to find us." Yuan Shushi's eyes were blazing, but there was no joy or anger on Wan Rong's face. Wan Rong took out a package from behind and handed it to Yuan Shushi. "These are some clothes I made for you. Summer is about to pass and autumn is coming soon. Yuan Shushi looked at the package, his face turned cold, he stood up suddenly, his face suddenly brightened and darkened, and he looked back at the gloomy sky outside the hall. "You know, a lot of people are going to die today." Wan Rong was stunned for a moment, but then shook her head, stood up and walked to the door of the hall, letting the strong wind blow her hair. "Someone dies every day. Fame and wealth will not be brought with them in life, and they will not be taken with them in death. Even if their names are left in history, it is only an ink in the history books. But the strong will save themselves, and the saints will save others. Brother Yuan, do you understand me?" Wan Rong's words immediately made Yuan Shushi speechless. The sweet and lovely girl in front of him suddenly became strange at this moment. I saw Wan Rong picking up the package and placing it in Yuan Shushi's hand. Yuan Shushi took 2 steps back, looked at the package in his hand, suddenly raised his head, and stared at the Buddha statue in the main hall, his eyes filled with hatred. Gritting his teeth, "I'll wait for you under the drum tower in the east of the city." "I don't believe it. There will always be a day when you leave the palace. I will wait every day until you leave the palace." After that, he hugged the package and walked out of the palace gate. Looking at the retreating figure, Wan Rong's eyes gradually became blurred. At this time, a eunuch who was guarding the door bowed and walked forward. When he saw this, he whispered, "Miss Shangguan, why bother? Our family knows a secluded place." Wan Rong raised her eyebrows slightly when she heard this and looked sideways at the eunuch. "What do you mean?" He, of course it is to fulfill the friendship between the girl and Mr. Yuan." The eunuch grinned and snickered. Not noticing that the eyes of the girl standing in front of him were full of murderous intent, he patted the eunuch on the shoulder. Okay, someone is here. Promise." 2 Shinwu guards holding swords and axes stepped forward with cold expressions. "Put it in and chop it off." "Ah!" The eunuch was startled, and his expression suddenly changed. He quickly knelt on the ground and kowtowed desperately, "Miss Shangguan, no, Zhaorong, spare your life. I have good intentions. Zhaorong, spare your life, spare." But the Shinwu guards who took the order did not wait for him, and dragged him away by cutting in from left to right. Not long after, the sound of a sword being drawn pierced the air was heard, and His Highness's scream suddenly became quiet. Following the sound of footsteps, the Shinwu guard who had just left stepped forward holding the eunuch's head in his hands. "After the order is passed, from now on, there will be no Yuan Shushi in the palace, and all records about him will be erased. I don't want to hear anyone mention this name again. Promise." After Wan Rong finished speaking, a bolt of lightning pierced the sky, and huge raindrops began to fall. Boom! The rain was pouring down.
For a while, pedestrians on the street covered their foreheads with their sleeves and ran home quickly. After a while, the huge street was empty. Tick 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 tick. Drops of water hit the ground along the wall tiles, and the damp cold wind blew on the face. The sound of the wind was gentle and filled with a cold murderous aura. On the official road leading to Ziwei Palace, there was a cold sound of the piano. Su Tong glanced around, and the dark shadows were quickly gathering towards Su Tong. It is hard to imagine that besides bad people, there are so many strange people in Luoyang City. 3 people have entered the Tao, and 7 are Grand Masters. When did the Grand Masters become so worthless? Su Tong curled his lips and suddenly stopped moving forward. Looking up, he saw 2 women standing on the official road, one holding an umbrella and the other playing the piano. Under the sound of the woman's piano, the rain seemed to begin to slow down with the rhythm of her playing. This road is blocked. Your Majesty, you might as well find another way. The woman playing the piano raised her head, with a naturally charming face, and her big watery eyes scanning Su Tong's body up and down. I've been in Tanhuelo for so many days, why haven't I seen such a stunning beauty like you? Su Tong grinned at the woman and asked. Not all women in the world have to join Tanhuelo. I don't have that kind of blessing. I can get talented people from all over the world to write poems and paintings for me, just for the few taels of silver every day, so I can live a peaceful life. The woman's voice was as clear as a bell, and it seemed to have a sense of rhythm even in the heavy rain. Entering the Tao through music. Although the woman in front of me is a harp master, she has the Tao fruit. It can be seen that the harp skill has reached its peak. That's easy, I'll give you 500 taels, can you get out of the way? Su Tong asked with a smile. Haha, the prince is really an interesting person, but how did the prince know that a poem you wrote in Tanhuelo is worth thousands of gold, and 500 taels may not be enough? Then shall I also make you a line of poetry? Hearing this, the woman's eyes finally showed something strange. Did you write it specifically to me? Yes, as talented as a girl is, it would be best if she could have a poem to match her. Su Tong said and took 2 more steps forward, as if he wanted to see more clearly through the rain. Apparently the woman also noticed this, her willow leaf eyebrows raised slightly. The prince has to write a poem in 7 steps. That's for vulgar people, girls, and poor monks. Why do you need 7 steps? 3 steps are enough. After Su Tong said this, he took another step forward, stared at the girl's face, and the smile at the corner of his mouth became brighter. A flower in the rain looks like a toad up close. An ugly person has a sweet mouth, and scares people without giving them money. With a big round head and shrimp eyes, even though people are ugly, they are like flowers. At first glance, they look quite ugly. But when you look closely, hey, he is even uglier. Hearing Su Tong's limerick, even the killer hiding in the dark almost couldn't help laughing. The woman's almond-shaped eyes were as bright as bells, and she was so angry that the sound of her fingers suddenly became chaotic. It would be fine if it were anyone else, but it was Li Zhang, the love monk, who was described in this way. If word spread, he would be ugly even if he was not ugly. Court death. The furious woman hooked her fingertips on the strings, and saw that the strings were pulled to half a moon by the woman like a bowstring. As soon as she loosened her fingers, she heard a deafening roar, and the surrounding space condensed, and then it rained all over the sky. Like dense bullets, they shot towards the surroundings. Su Tong's pupils tightened, and with the gaze of his heavenly eyes, he saw countless invisible and shadowless sound rays densely bombarding him. Xian Yuan shield. Seeing that there was no way to hide, Su Tong waved his hand, and a green light appeared in front of him. The moment the sound line touched, a terrifying frost erupted, and countless sharp eyes shot towards the woman. Facing the frost in front of her eyes, the woman just played the piano, her fingers on the strings like dancing butterflies.
She only heard the sound of the piano like a tide, stirring the surrounding void and making it tremble. This ray of moonlight made people mesmerized, and wherever it passed, the entire void rippled. Everything is so beautiful, so mesmerizing. But behind this beauty is a terrible murderous intention. The ripples visible to the naked eye trembled in the void, like a stormy sea, hitting the Xianyuan shield one after another. Even if Su Tong's Xianyuan shield was blessed with Yanshu, spider web-like cracks appeared in a matter of seconds. Obviously, the sound of this woman's piano is as soft as water, but it is invisible. There are needles hidden in the cotton. She specializes in restraining the world's horizontal refining skills. I am afraid that after the last battle in the Six Arts Hall, everyone knows that she is good at defense, and her body is as good as gold. This is why he asked this woman to be the killer. Realizing that the Xianyuan shield could not last long, Su Tong simply stopped passively defending and summoned the Pure Yang sword. The blade of the sword was swung like a long dragon, and an unmatched sword energy of Pure Yang sword energy was slashed down, as if to tear the space in front of him apart. Crack! But just at the moment Su Tong drew his sword, two after-images struck in the darkness, one from the left and one from the right, with both hands, and the entire void in front of him was twisted and layered like a shock wave. It is the other two Taoist killers lurking in the dark. Su Tong recognized these two people as the two teammates following Ashina. For a moment, the three of them formed an angle and launched a fatal blow to Su Tong. At the moment of life and death, little did he know that Su Tong's body suddenly shone brightly, with green dragon scales covering his whole body. At the same time, Tai Chi sword skills were twisting and turning in his hands. The sword's edge seemed to be fast or slow, and a blaze of flames struck all directions, cutting the sword to the ground. Fire slash. It consumes 30 script points to create explosive flames within a 20-meter diameter area centered on itself. The surrounding targets have a 60% chance of being knocked back. Accompanied by a booming sound, the hot and bright red fire exploded with Su Tong as the center, and the terrible high temperature and shock wave were mixed together and rolled out in all directions. This sword seemed to catch the three of them off guard. The woman's face changed drastically. She picked up the guqin in her hand and flew back. However, the woman holding the umbrella for her was not so lucky. She was instantly reduced to ashes in the flames without even struggling. One of the other two players in the shadow group was triggered by the knockback effect, and his body flew backwards. The other player also had a golden light shield on his body. He actually became invincible for a short second, and the dagger in his hand erupted with a terrifying black light and stabbed Su. Childlike. Poof, hot blood splashed on the ground. The dagger ignored the scales on Su Tong's palm that were blessed with the Vajra seal, and pierced Su Tong's palm, missing Su Tong's heart by just an inch. This dagger is obviously not an ordinary thing. It can ignore his scale armor and diamond seal. It is at least a high-level prop card. Seeing that the blow missed, a cruel look appeared on the opponent's face. He actually gave up the dagger and hit Su Tong's chest with both fists like hammers. Huge pain hit him. The Pure Yang sword in Su Tong's hand was like lightning, and he struck down with one strike. The opponent had no time to dodge, so he could only block with his arms, and his body flashed with golden light again. Hey! It's just the right time. However, the expected slash did not land, causing the opponent to be startled. He hurriedly lowered his arm and saw that Su Tong had put away the Pure Yang sword in his hand, clasped his fists with both hands, and bowed heavily to him. He asked for mercy. Looking at such a strange posture, anyone would think so, but the despicable thing about Bashenko is precisely here. The moment the other party was distracted, there was a huge pain in his mind, as if he had been hit by a sledgehammer inexplicably. His head was about to crack, and the golden light on his body disappeared in an instant. Ah! At this moment, something appeared in Su Tong's hand, a bronze mirror. When the mirror was pointed at him,
he saw his reflection on the mirror, and the sound of a successful notification.